boy only cut open the whale's belly and was shocked for 3 seconds, because inside the whale's belly was a girl holding a sword. More amazingly, the girl was still alive, but this made Stern even more uneasy, because this girl might not be human, so he asked Julian to watch her while he went to look up some information. Although Julian was scared, looking at the girl's still charming face, he, who had been single for 18 years, began to blush. He even started fantasizing that when the girl wakes up, she would become his future wife because he was her savior, just as he was imagining her giving birth to 11 children who would win the World Cup. The girl suddenly woke up. Julian stuttered, wanting to tell the girl that he had saved her, but was interrupted by her. She asked for his name, and upon learning Julian's name, she very respectfully addressed him as master and asked him to give her a name. Only then did Julian realize that the girl might have amnesia. Looking at the expectant girl, Julian pondered what name would be good. Just then he noticed the bracelet hanging by the bedside, so he named her Carnelian, because the girl's pupils resembled that gemstone. Little did he know that the act of naming the girl would completely change both their destinies. Just then Stern rushed in, wanting to warn Julian not to give the girl a name, because he had found in an ancient book the girl was a species called seal. They were sealed in various places around the world, only to be awakened by powerful forces. Once a tamer gives her a name, an irreversible contract would be formed. Although they look like humans, they have stronger powers than humans, and would only obey their tamer. When their tamer dies, they would fall back into slumber. But Stern was too late. As the runes on the great sword lit up, Carnelian knelt and swore to accept Julian as her master. Stern could only helplessly accept reality, while Julian was innocently punished. But what puzzled Stern was that he had never found any record of a seal being discovered in a whale's belly. However, it was certain that Carnelian was a high-level seal with a weapon, possessing combat power that tens of thousands of regular troops couldn't match. But Carnelian scoffed and said, "You're underestimating me. Tens of thousands aren't enough to fill my teeth. Destroying a country would be just a piece of cake for me." But the two of them couldn't feel any resonance, and Carnelian didn't feel at all that Julian was her tamer. "I don't know why a cook like you could awaken me." Julian felt offended and immediately retorted, "I've already told you that you woke up on your own. I didn't awaken you." Just then Stern said, "Then let's change masters." They could just transfer Carnelian to someone else who could become a tamer. Julian was very satisfied with this solution. This way he could escape his current predicament. But Carnelian asked puzzledly, "Does this little fishing village really have knights?" "Of course not here, but this village is managed by a lord." So Stern invited the lord's foolish son, Cass Trump. The moment he saw Carnelian, he was conquered by her still charming appearance. Drool flowed from the corners of his mouth, full of admiration. After observing her for 2 rounds, he was extremely satisfied with Carnelian's beauty and figure. He even eagerly extended his lecherous hand, wanting to immediately give her a name, but was swatted away by Carnelian, because her current tamer was still Julian, and no one could touch her without his permission. Cass Trump also regained some sense. This frivolous behavior left Julian speechless. Was such a knight really worthy of entrusting? Just then Cass Trump shouted at him, "What are you dawdling for? Hurry up and start changing masters." So Julian let him give Carnelian a name first, after thinking with his pig-like brain for 2 minutes. Cass Trump excitedly told Carnelian, "Your new name will be Castilla," but no one except himself liked this name. Others asked, "Are you serious?" And next, as long as Julian agrees, the master-changing procedure can be completed. But Julian looked towards Carnelian, wanting to confirm if she was willing to become Cass Trump's servant. But not only did Carnelian show no reluctance, she even urged him to quickly start changing masters. Julian had no choice but to agree. After all, no matter what, a knight was definitely better than a cook. At this moment, Carnelian suddenly lowered her head. Cass Trump thought she was bowing to him. He reached out his palm to caress Carnelian's cheek, wanting to get a good look at his soon-to-be new plaything. But the next second Carnelian swatted him away, saying irritably, "Get your dirty hands off me, you are stupid idiot. It seems my name is still Carnelian." It turned out Julian's power was too weak. He couldn't even give the command to change masters. How did trash like you awaken her then? But Carnelian didn't know the reason either, but he felt relieved at this moment, because this way he wouldn't have to be called by that terrible name Castilla. But how could Cass Trump let such a fat sheep slip away? So he drew his thin and long weapon, preparing to stab Julian to death. After all, you're just a lowly person. If I can't get it peacefully, then I'll just take it by force. He even said dying by his sword would be Julian's honor. But just as he was about to stab, Carnelian made her move. Cass Trump's head instantly relocated. "Since you think death is an honor, then go die," she said while gracefully sheathing her great sword. "I'm not wrong, am I, my cook?" By now Julian was already trembling with fear. Looking at the frightened Julian, Carnelian teased, "So my master is seeing someone being killed for the first time. You will have to get used to such scenes if you're going to be with me." Seeing Carnelian continuously approaching him, Julian backed away in fear, repeatedly saying, "Don't come near me." Carnelian just calmly said, "No seal would harm their own master. Just relax. Even Even if you're weak, you're still my master, and if you suddenly die, it would be troublesome for me. Just then, Kaz Trump's guards surrounded them, immediately drawing their swords preparing to capture Carnelian. But Carnelian reminded them, "You don't have time to deal with me right now, do you?" Only then did everyone notice. The seal that originally belonged to Kaz Trump suddenly became abnormal. One of them even screamed in terror, "The seal has lost connection. We must quickly kill the seal." But before he could finish speaking, a long sword fell on his bald head. Then the seal began the slaughter. No one could stop her. But what was worse, another seal also started losing connection. A guard tried to take the opportunity to kill her, but was blasted 2 meters away by a powerful aura. Julian was very confused. Why did they start fighting among themselves? Carnelian explained that after their master dies, seals instantly lose rationality and attack people around randomly. That's what's called losing connection. When Julian heard that earlier, when she said she'd be in trouble if he died, did she mean she would also lose connection? After getting an affirmative response, Julian asked if there was any way to stop it, but Carnelian told him that seals' minds would return to normal after some time, but before that many people would die. Soon the two seals completely eliminated all the guards. There was no one left who could fight against them. The seals then turned their target to the powerless Julian, just as the sword was about to pierce him. Carnelian crossed her great sword, easily blocking the strike. Seeing this, the two disconnected seals looked at her fiercely, looking at her approaching kind. Carnelian was somewhat helpless. "Although I don't want to fight seals, but you want to kill my master, so I have no choice but to kill you." The seal used the simplest sword draw. Carnelian directly split her opponent in half. After all, Carnelian was the champion of the 1974 Southeast Asian free fighting competition. But this scene also deeply shocked Julian. Although he had killed hundreds of millions of whales, he had never felt such fear before. The villagers who witnessed all this began to discuss, how could this woman jump so high and kill the powerful seal with one sword strike? What background does she have? Just then someone shouted loudly, "She is Julian's seal." Looking at the corpses everywhere, Julian had already frozen in place. At this moment he felt all this was fake, but the blood all over him seemed to remind him this was all real. The strong smell of blood made him vomit. Carnelian walked towards Julian. "Are you okay?" Hearing this, Julian slowly raised his head and said, "Thank you," to Carnelian. "Thanks to you, I could survive." But Carnelian told him not to misunderstand. After all, if the master dies, I would also lose rationality and attack others. If low-level seals losing connection cause such chaos, what do you think would happen if a high-level seal like me lost connection? But Julian still insisted on saying thank you while vomiting. Carnelian could only sigh helplessly. What a useless master. Not only cowardly, but can't even give a seal command to change masters. Julian could only keep apologizing to her and promised he would find a way to solve it. 2.5 hours later, the small fishing village returned to peace. The villagers spontaneously began to clean up the aftermath, thoughtfully packaged up the dead, and contacted the one-stop service at the cemetery. Carnelian still charmingly held her great sword, while Julian looked at the distance with some guilt. Just then Stern found them. "What are your plans next?" Carnelian glared at him and asked back, "Do we need any plans? You killed the Lord's foolish son and seals. How could the Lord possibly ignore this?" But Carnelian expressed indifference. "Just a mere regional lord. Even if he mobilizes all his troops, I can solve it in less than a minute." Stern poked himself in frustration. "I'm not asking how quickly you can kill them." "Then do you mean kill them slowly? That will cost extra." Stern sighed helplessly. "Didn't expect you to be so cold-blooded. But think about it. Even if you annihilate all the Lord's troops, there will be stronger troops and seals coming. Very likely troops from neighboring kingdoms will come. Even Imperial troops might come." Carnelian just calmly stared at Stern. Mobilizing troops because of a small rural lord's son. They must be really free. Hearing this, Stern shook his head. "But that's nobility." To this, Carnelian was still indifferent. "Even if kingdom troops come, I only need 2 days." Before she could finish speaking, Julian interrupted. "That way, everyone in the village would die." "So what? Isn't survival of the fittest natural in this world?" Julian clenched his fists unwillingly, saying very unconfidently, "No one thinks they deserve to die just because they're weak." Carnelian raised her arm, pointing to the village. "Why didn't you say such things when that pig was still alive? Do you think he would have spared you? Not only lacking ability, but even your heart is so weak. So what do you plan to do?" "My master." Just when everyone didn't know what to do, Julian suddenly said he would go explain the situation to the Lord, asking for forgiveness for this matter. This simple-minded thought instantly amused Carnelian. "How will you explain? Say you killed his son but still ask for his forgiveness? If it were you, would you agree? Although it's not easy, how would we know without trying?" Just then Stern interrupted the two. "Let me go explain." "Haha, how funny, did you all take the wrong medicine?" But Stern confidently said he could explain everything clearly, whether it was changing masters or the fighting. It was all an unavoidable situation at the time. "It's more suitable for me to go than Julian." Soon it was twilight. Carnelian stood blankly before the graves of the two dead seals. Her eyes revealed barely noticeable sadness. Just then Julian suddenly appeared. Carnelian also changed to a calm expression and asked what he wanted to say. Julian happily told her Stern was back. Carnelian was somewhat puzzled. He actually came back alive. Is he back in one piece? Are his head and limbs still attached? Stern lived up to expectations and brought back good news, but they would have to personally apologize for it to be accepted. Julian was happy like a child. "I knew you could convince the Lord," while Carnelian was somewhat disbelieving. Just an apology would do? What madman in this world would readily accept an apology from his child's killer. Stern accused Carnelian of having two extreme thoughts. Have you only seen humanity's ugly side in your thousands of years? Whatever you think, I'm not interested in such ridiculous things. Julian immediately put on an earnest expression. Please, Carnelian, just come with me. Seeing this, Carnelian could only sigh helplessly. Agreeing to Julian's request, since Master says so, I naturally have to comply. So the two set off overnight for the Lord's castle with a small donkey, but during their rest break, they were surprised to learn that Carnelian didn't need to eat to survive. The energy around her was her food, just like how plants can photosynthesize. These strange pieces of knowledge left Julian full of questions. Carnelian could only sigh helplessly. Forget it, you don't need to understand these. But seeing Julian eating his spicy strips with relish, she immediately snatched them away. Weren't you saying you don't need food to survive? Why snatch my spicy strips? There's still my saliva on them. Wouldn't that be like an indirect kiss? Before he could finish speaking, Carnelian spat out the spicy strips, while Julian reached into his backpack, took out spicy strips and continued chatting with her, curiously asking who her previous master was. Must have been an amazing night, right? But Carnelian suddenly stopped talking. After staying silent for 2 minutes, Carnelian suddenly asked Julian if he knew what privacy meant. Julian was hearing this word for the first time. Is that something like a magic spell? That's right. It's a spell that prevents others from prying into my emotions. I was cast with that magic. So don't ask anymore. Hurry up and eat your spicy strips and go to sleep. With that, she turned around to prepare for sleep. When Julian fell into deep sleep, he didn't know that Carnelian, who was facing away from him, was now too heavy-hearted to sleep. Time came to the next day. The two finally arrived at the Lord's castle. A servant came to receive them, but when he saw Carnelian holding her great sword, he immediately reached out wanting to take away the weapon, saying according to rules, weapons couldn't be brought in. Carnelian glared at him angrily. The last person who touched my sword has already met his ancestors. Are you sure you want to touch it? The servant hurriedly withdrew his hand in fear. Julian quickly tried to persuade Carnelian to follow the rules but was rejected by her. If I can't bring my sword in, then you go apologize alone. Seeing Carnelian so determined, the servant had to compromise, running back to report in a flash. 2 minutes later, he came back smiling to inform the two that the Lord agreed to let them bring in the sword. When the two entered the castle, they finally met the Lord who was waiting for them. But there were many servants by his side. Julian politely bowed to the Lord. The Lord said with a gloomy face, I've heard about your matter. Julian immediately knelt down. We came to apologize to you about your son. But the Lord didn't speak, just waved his hand asking Julian to come closer. But when Julian was walking towards the Lord, Carnelian's eyes kept watching him. She didn't expect the Lord to be so reasonable. But seeing Julian walking very slowly, the Lord stood up and quickly walked towards him. The next second, the Lord suddenly grabbed Julian's neck and lifted him up. So you're called Julian, right? Do it. After speaking, the servants behind him immediately took action, surrounding Carnelian and casting sealing magic. It turned out those servants were actually disguised magicians as they chanted spells. Chains appeared out of thin air and firmly bound Carnelian. As the chains gradually tightened, Carnelian also showed a painful expression. At this time, both were completely under the Lord's control, and the Lord revealed a secret to Julian that devastated him. Stern said as long as the village could be saved, it would be fine. As for you, this orphan, use your life to repay the village's kindness in raising you. Although Stern was born in such a poor remote place, he's quite clever, isn't he? After saying this, he threw Julian hard. After sliding 2 meters, Julian directly fainted. What a fool. Actually daring to come here voluntarily. But just as the Lord was preparing to follow the plan, first seal Carnelian, then take Julian's life. Carnelian got angry. I knew it would be like this. A rural lord's thoughts are very easy to guess, aren't they? Still talking tough in this situation. After the sealing is complete, I will. But before he could finish speaking, he was interrupted by Carnelian. Then she broke 2 chains. You mean this? The next second, her great sword burst forth with powerful energy, breaking all the chains. You think you can trap me with such crude things? As the sword tip touched the ground inscribed with magic erase, the surrounding magicians were directly blasted away by the powerful energy. All instantly fainted. The Lord was greatly shocked. How could this be? How are you not following the script? Did you knowingly walk into this trap? You just realize now? You should have guessed this outcome when your pig-like son died, but the Lord didn't plan to give up, so he immediately called for his secret weapon, while Carnelian suddenly raised her great sword, throwing it towards the dark corner behind the Lord, then amazingly hit someone. This little rat wouldn't happen to be your secret weapon. With the death of the Lord's secret weapon, the Lord finally felt fear. Looks like you're the real fool. Then Carnelian began chanting spells. Energy from the surroundings continuously gathered towards her. The Lord finally realized the seal before him was actually a high-level 1 proficient in both physical and magical combat. While Carnelian calmly said, disappear. The next second, a huge burst of energy shot skyward. The entire castle began to shake. After a huge explosion sound, the entire Lord's castle was razed to the ground. When Julian woke up, he found Carnelian had been protecting him, but the scene before him made him somewhat panicked, so he asked where the Lord was. Carnelian raised her hand, pointing in a direction, but it made Julian greatly shocked, because there was only ruins there. After this incident, Julian finally grew up a bit. So you knew from the beginning this was a trap? Carnelian calmly told him. You understand the principle that like father like son, right? The Lord like his son wasn't any good person. Moreover, keeping such a guy would only cause headaches later, so from now on don't have such useless sympathy. But the next second Carnelian prepared to leave leave with an unfriendly face. After all, there's still one person to deal with. In the night fishing village, the villagers were discussing. Why was Julian's seal preparing to kill Stern? Weren't they close enough to share underwear? Suddenly, Carnelian spoke. I allow you to say 2 last words. Stern closed his eyes as if already accepting his fate, but still said something that Carnelian found laughable. To save the village, I really had no choice. Hearing Carnelian was going to kill Stern, the always slow Julian was shocked. You didn't say you would kill him, Carnelian. He also had no choice but to make such a choice for the village. But Carnelian asked him back, would you do the same in his position? Using having no choice as an excuse to ease your guilty conscience. How disgusting. Hearing this, Julian couldn't refute, because he really wouldn't do that. But even so, he didn't want Stern to lose his life for this. So he pushed away Carnelian's great sword, requesting as her master to spare Stern. But Carnelian again pointed her sword at the ashamed Stern. Human nature is selfish. Weren't you curious about who my previous masters were? For thousands of years, my body and heart have been constantly defiled by those people, forever only being used by so-called masters, then falling into slumber. This is my sad fate as a seal. Seeing Carnelian break the secret magic seal, speaking out the secret hidden in her heart, Julian gently grabbed her hand. Although I don't know what you've been through, but I won't do the same things. I will help you. Please believe me. Hearing this, Carnelian fell silent, then sighed helplessly. But the next second, her tone suddenly changed. Fine, I won't kill him. How can a master beg a seal? I almost died from embarrassment. Hearing he wouldn't be killed, Stern guiltily said thank you to her, and Julian also chose to forgive him. Although I still can't believe you betrayed me, but I believe you were really thinking for the village. Just then Carnelian suddenly said, you said you would help me, right? But Julian replied he didn't know what to do, but he would do his best at anything within his ability. While Carnelian demanded that he first become a knight, then find her a rich and excellent knight master. Julian felt like he had been cuckolded, but also felt it was reasonable. But Carnelian looked into the distance and continued, we need to go to the city first. There will be ways once we get there. Just then Stern told them a merchant was returning to the city tomorrow. They could take his carriage to leave, and promised to prepare for their long journey. But Carnelian didn't seem very appreciative. Left, without acknowledging Stern. Only Julian looked back reluctantly, but Stern lowered his head in shame. Little did they know this farewell would leave them with no chance to meet again. The next morning, Carnelian changed into new clothes. Even she felt great, but was somewhat dissatisfied with Julian. Why did you bring so many things? Julian proudly said, humans are different from seals. There are many things to prepare. As the clip-clop sound approached, the merchant's carriage stopped in front of them. Carnelian asked the merchant where had the most knights, and they must be proper knights. After thinking for a while, the merchant suggested they go to Belsheba, because there would be a royal duel there in a week. The so-called royal duel was fighting in front of the king. It was dueling where knights killed each other to attract the king's attention. These words startled the merchant, because such words would certainly cause big trouble if heard by knights. But Carnelian was very contemptuous of so-called knights. Worst case, just kill them with one sword. But the merchant was going to Slock, then suggested they could take a ship there. That way they could reach Belsheba before the duel began. So the two followed the merchant towards Slock, but Julian had a bitter face all the way. He didn't expect to suddenly leave the village where he had lived since birth. Hearing Julian say this, Carnelian also fell into thought, then said partings always come unexpectedly, but Julian was again full of question marks, completely not understanding what she meant. This made Carnelian somewhat embarrassed, didn't expect communication to be so difficult, then comforted him. Just treat it as taking a trip. After all, once we find a way to change masters in the city, you can return to that small village again. Soon the two arrived at the port, but there were no seats on the ship, and the next ship would only come back after the duel ended. So Carnelian decided to knock out a few people, then sneak onto the ship, but was vetoed by Julian. Then should we just hijack the entire ship? Hearing this, Julian was sweating cold sweat. That's not what I meant. I'm telling you not to do such outrageous things. Just then, Julian heard people nearby discussing. Lord Castro's castle suddenly disappeared. He quickly whispered to Carnelian, we better keep a low profile. It's better to leave quietly. Just when they had no solution, a figure walked towards them. Excuse me, I accidentally overheard your conversation. Do you need a ship to Belsheba? We happen to have 2 empty spots on our ship going there. But just as Julian was about to say they needed it, Carnelian fiercely looked at the newcomer and said, accidentally? All the ship owners here say they have no spots while you let us board. The man nervously expressed, if you reject my goodwill, then there's nothing I can do. Julian suddenly interrupted Carnelian's interrogation and expressed that they wanted to arrive before the royal duel began. Can we see the ship first? The man immediately happily expressed, of course, but you need to seize the opportunity. After all, finding a ship to Belsheba at this time is harder than picking stars. So under Julian's persuasion, the tired and irritated Carnelian had to follow him. Really don't know whether to call him kind or ignorant. Little did they know Carnelian's suspicion would prove true again, because the man was Bernie, a member of the smuggling ship, and now the two had become prey in his eyes. At this moment, Carnelian was very reluctant to follow Julian. onto the smuggler's ship. But Bernie told them, "Unfortunately, you two can't stay together. Men and women must stay separately on our ship." The two immediately became awkward, with Julian quickly explaining that they weren't that kind of relationship. But Bernie mischievously looked at Carnelian saying, "Oh, so you haven't defined your relationship yet," making them even more awkward. Then Bernie showed them to their rooms. While he was leading Julian to his quarters, he kept smirking at Carnelian. When Julian arrived at his accommodation, he found everyone looking listless. Suddenly, the door slammed shut, startling Julian. He tried to open the door, but a man told him that the doors would remain locked until the ship departed, because this ship wasn't registered, meaning if anyone on board disappeared, no one would know. Julian then realized he might have encountered the legendary human trafficking ring, and immediately thought of Carnelian. He desperately tried to break open the door, but to no avail. Just then, he noticed a box nearby, so he used the box to break the door lock, and immediately ran out to look for Carnelian. But after searching all the rooms, he couldn't find her. Just then, there was a rumbling sound, and Julian immediately sensed something was wrong. He rushed towards the deck, constantly praying in his heart, "Please, Carnelian, don't destroy the ship or we won't be able to get to Belsheba." When he burst onto the deck, Carnelian happily waved at him. "I didn't expect my master to be so gutsy, actually knowing to break down the door to escape. Did you come to save me?" "Of course not. I came to stop you." Hearing this, Carnelian looked hurt. "Did you think I would destroy this ship? I just felt something was odd, so I investigated and found these guys look like human traffickers. That's why I took action." But just then, Bernie crawled out from the crowd, shouting that they weren't. Meanwhile, the stowaways also came out from the cabin, but instead of thanking Carnelian, they started accusing them. "You're so mean. What did you do to the crew?" This sudden accusation left Carnelian confused. It turned out Bernie and his crew were just disguising these people as contraband, charging minimal fare to transport them to Belsheba, because the Empire of Belsheba had very strict screening for poor people. Learning the truth, both felt guilty. Fortunately, Bernie didn't pursue the matter. After all, he hadn't explained things to them earlier. But Bernie was also very curious about their identities. Carnelian immediately claimed she was a seal, while Julian was an apprentice knight. She made sure to emphasize that Julian was just an apprentice knight, heading to Belsheba for important business. "Though this knight looks foolish, as you can see, I'm really powerful." But just then, Bernie interrupted her. "Don't you know that during the period of royal duels, they specially prepare ships for knights, with free private rooms and all kinds of high-end cuisine?" Carnelian was shocked. "There's such a good deal? If I had known, I would have had him pose as a knight from the beginning." Just then, Bernie told the two, "We don't have such treatment on our ship, and you'll have to pay for causing this disturbance." Julian quickly explained that he had already spent all his money on the fare. Hearing this, Bernie tilted his head and smiled. "If you don't have money, let's try something else." 2.5 hours later, Julian was seriously stirring a pot, while Carnelian had transformed into a service waitress. The crew members were heartily eating whale legs. "Eat slowly. If we run out of whale, I'll go catch more for you." Much later, Carnelian could finally rest. "These crew members really could eat. We just haven't had such delicious food in a long time. Besides, for a knight to be such a good cook, he's really amazing." Hearing this, Carnelian instantly burned with anger. It's not that he can cook in addition to other things. Cooking is all he can do. Then she calmed down and asked Bernie, "Is this enough to make up for our mistake?" But Bernie refused. This isn't enough. Just as Carnelian was about to get angry, Bernie cheerfully said, "After eating and drinking, we need some entertainment." Then everyone started arm wrestling with Carnelian, though they were clearly asking for trouble. 2.5 days later, they arrived at Belsheba. After saying goodbye to Bernie, the two came to the bustling market district. Julian, entering a big city for the first time, was very curious. He kept looking around at all the novel sights, which annoyed Carnelian with his inexperience. She reminded him again about pretending to be a knight. After all, Bernie had said knights could eat and drink for free here, but Julian hadn't heard a word, instead pointing ahead in shock. There appeared a beast man, something Julian had never seen before. But this really angered Carnelian. "When I'm talking, you need to listen carefully." But then she patiently explained to Julian. After all, it was his first time seeing an orc. The so-called orcs were one of the other races. Although they weren't originally such docile creatures, they became tame after being captured and trained by humans. And not just orcs, humans had long ago captured fairies, cave giants, and other races to use as slaves. Hearing this, Julian suddenly stopped walking because he thought humans were being cruel. Just then the entire street suddenly started shaking. People around panicked and shouted, "It's Lord Kudro!" The next second, a huge elephant walked towards Julian. Everyone fearfully knelt down. Only Julian stood there foolishly. But this also angered Kudro. In his eyes, lowly people should kneel before him. So he ordered the elephant to trample him to death. But after a tremendous boom, the elephant's foot hadn't stomped down as expected, instead being held up by Carnelian with one hand. The elephant was terrified, as this wasn't strength a humans should possess. The next second, Carnelian raised her great sword, then leaped high, with just one slash splitting the elephant in half. The merchant Kudro fell to the ground pathetically, his face full of terror. Carnelian fixed her disheveled hair. What lowly merchant dares to block a knight's path? Julian was about to remind Carnelian that he wasn't a knight, but was warned by her to shut up. Hearing that the other party was a knight, the merchant trembled uncontrollably, unable to understand why a knight would deliberately block his way. Just then a great sword pointed at him. "Hey, stupid merchant! Who gave you permission to speak with that lowly mouth?" Julian Julian felt dejected, not understanding how things had turned out this way, while Carnelian seemed to be really enjoying herself. Just then Carnelian said, "Fortunately, my Knightmaster is unlike you. He's very magnanimous, so try begging for mercy. If you kneel, he might spare your life." But Kudro not only refused to apologize but accused Carnelian of being too despicable, attacking when he was completely defenseless. Carnelian thrust her sword tip forward. "So you want me to just kill you instead?" Kudro immediately shut his mouth. Then he glared at Julian maliciously. "I challenge you to a duel. 3 days from now, I'll wait for you at the royal duel grounds." With that, he fled pathetically. As he ran, he kept shouting, "Don't you dare run away!" This scene made Carnelian laugh out loud. Look at how stupid he looks. But Julian was terrified, because in a duel wouldn't he be done for? Carnelian told him not to worry, because the duel Kudro mentioned was actually a battle between seals. With that, she put away her great sword. Looking at her dirty self, Carnelian thought they should first find lodging and get cleaned up. But this made Julian panic, because his pockets were as empty as his face. With such a ruthless, wandering knight like you around, do we need to spend money? Then they came to a knights-only inn where people immediately recognized them. Everyone was whispering, saying they heard Kudro had almost lost his life. The staff very carefully checked them in, saying they would definitely serve them comfortably. Julian was about to speak, but got punched by Carnelian. She could guess with her little toe that he was going to say he wasn't a knight again. Then she very concernedly supported him. "How terrible, Sir Knight, has your wound opened up again?" The next second Carnelian viciously said, "Didn't I tell you to pretend to be a knight? Just try saying no one more time." Then she tightly held Julian's neck to keep him quiet, while smilingly asking the staff to quickly process their check-in. Then the two came to their room, but Julian seemed troubled. "Isn't it inconvenient for us to share a room?" Seeing his shy expression, Carnelian chuckled. "I didn't expect you to have such dark thoughts. Though you were like this on the ship too. You really are stupid wanting to stay separately from a seal. You should know that for a knight, a seal is like their sword and shield, something to keep by their side at all times." With that, Carnelian started looking for something. 2.5 hours later, Julian was boredly eating an apple when he was attracted by a languid voice. He saw Carnelian, fresh from her bath, comfortably stretching. Seeing Julian's face turn red, "How did your clothes end up like that?" It turned out the inn's provided clothes had been modified by Carnelian. "That old-fashioned style doesn't suit me. I'm very avant-garde after all." With that, she started teasing Julian, scaring him into quickly turning his head away. His face red as he said she was going too fast. "I want to get off this ride! What are you afraid of? You're supposed to be a ruthless, wandering knight." But just as Carnelian was preparing to rest, she suddenly stood up, because she sensed a powerful presence approaching. Then a voice sounded outside the door. "Sir Knight, are you inside? Sorry to disturb your rest, but Knight Lai hopes to meet with you both." It turned out that when Carnelian arrived in Belsheba, Lai's seal had sensed her presence, and seemed quite familiar with her, and guessed that someone who could awaken her must be the Empire's most powerful knight. So Dietrich planned to visit them before the royal duel began, to see for himself just how strong this knight was. While Carnelian had heard of the Dietrich Willengel-Tauen Weiwen Muben Osas family, that famous knightly family of the Empire. Though unsure why they suddenly came, at least she sensed no killing intent, but Carnelian still picked up her great sword ready to fight, while Julian, hearing there was no killing intent, directly invited them in. But this sudden action startled Carnelian, but it was too late to stop him. Fortunately, the two who entered were very respectful, directly stating their purpose, just visiting the famous knight. Thanks to Carnelian's coaching, Julian somewhat embarrassedly admitted he was that knight. But to Lai, this didn't look like a powerful knight at all. Fortunately, Carnelian keenly noticed this point. After all, Julian looked like a complete country bumpkin who knew nothing of knightly etiquette. To dispel Lai's doubts, Carnelian immediately said, "My master belongs to no country, just a free knight in training, so he's very wary of revealing his family name." Julian played along, quickly inviting the two to sit and talk. But this made Lai believe even more that they must be hiding something. This sword was not only clumsy, but had no blade. Everyone thought it had no killing power, but it could not only kill pigs, but easily split an elephant in half. This also made Julian very curious. Could it be that the sword stance and footwork determined its killing power? But Carnelian said, "The true blade lies in the heart of the wielder. Even the sharpest treasure sword, if the heart is dull, couldn't cut even a leaf. And for me, what's most important is precisely that it has no edge. That way I can sleep while hugging it. Super cool in summer!" And it also had a very cool name, Mad Sword Mistral. Carnelian could feel that this guy liked the name. Just then, Lai and his seal came to greet them, and very concernedly told them to be careful in the duel. Carnelian happily greeted them back, saying there was nothing to be careful about. This kind of small match wasn't even a warm-up for her. It turned out the two had bonded over drinks at last night's gathering, becoming good girlfriends. A drunk Carnelian had almost revealed Julian's fake knight status. As the match began, Carnelian walked into the dueling grounds, while Julian and Kudro sat in the viewing stands. His seal was a fat man named Gashak, whose terrible stench made Carnelian somewhat unbearable. Her disgusted expression instantly angered Gashak, so he launched the first attack, then smashed his axe down hard where Carnelian had been. But as the dust cleared, Carnelian was no longer there, instead appearing behind him. "Are you taking after your master? Your movements are really too slow." Gashak immediately swung his axe backward, but missed again. Carnelian leaped high, doing 2.5 flips before landing steadily, but this drew boos from the audience. Don't just keep running away, fight him. Heh, I heard she was a high-level SEAL. Looks like that was just a rumor. Little did they know it wasn't, that Carnelian didn't want to fight, but she was sickened by the smell and didn't want to get close to her opponent. But Gashak hadn't stopped, swinging his axe at Carnelian again. This time Carnelian didn't dodge far, instead sidestepping his attack, then delivering a whip kick to Gashak's bottom. That casual kick sent him sprawling to the ground. I'm not running away, it's just your smell makes me want to stay far from you. But these words stimulated Gashak again. He raised his axe and leaped high, swinging down at Carnelian again. But Carnelian blocked it with one hand. You didn't really think you could beat me, did you? With that, she casually waved, sending Gashak's axe flying. The next second, Gashak suddenly knelt down and surrendered. Carnelian directly aimed her arrow at his heart. Looks like you're only suffering because you followed the wrong master. Hearing this, Gashak suddenly started trembling, thinking Carnelian was going to kill him. But Carnelian put away her arrow, ending it like this would be too boring. Let's write a magnificent ending. The next second, Carnelian started chanting magic spells. Then a huge burst of energy shot skyward. The audience was completely thrilled. She could even use high-level magic. When the chanting ended, countless fireballs fell from the sky. Carnelian was shocked. This isn't my doing. And those fireballs were indiscriminately attacking the dueling grounds. People started fleeing in panic, but the more chaotic it got, the harder it was to escape. Just as the fireballs were about to fall, a barrier suddenly appeared. Icarus arrived just in time to save everyone, buying them time to escape. Just then, Nightlie shouted, "Everyone take cover! The enemy country has launched a surprise attack!" With that, she quickly joined the battle, and soon controlled the situation. But her next decision shocked Seal Icarus. She decided to support the fallen city walls alone, while arranging for Icarus to defend against the enemy's airstrikes, because blocking the siege weapons required his defensive barrier. Icarus could only reluctantly agree, but for Nightlie's safety, Icarus enchanted her weapons with defensive magic. Looking at the enchanted weapon in her hand, Lie gave Icarus an order. If I die, go find another master. In war, you never know what might happen, and no one can resist you in an unlinked state. Icarus closed his eyes reluctantly and bowed, then rushed off to his battlefield. Nightlie looked up at the battlefield ahead, her eyes full of determination, then quickly went to provide support. Meanwhile, Carnelian was leisurely eating snacks. Julian suddenly asked, "Why did Lady Lie refuse our help?" It turned out that at the dueling grounds, Carnelian had easily dealt with the enemy forces that charged in. She was very unhappy about them disrupting her duel, so she asked Nightlie if she needed help. Unexpectedly, Lie refused. As a knight of Lisenbel, she could handle it herself, and told them to retreat to the inn first. It was in the inner city, and still safe for now. To this, Carnelian explained, "Knights are people who stake their lives on what they protect. But we've been saying you're a free knight, and free knights are people who don't apply that conviction to countries. It can be a narrow-minded heart, or it can be the way of knighthood. Asking a free knight to help your country is like asking someone to temporarily set aside their own convictions." Then Carnelian changed her tone. "Besides, if you want to get involved without having the strength, that's just meddling." Julian could only lower his head in frustration. Seeing this, Carnelian smiled and said, "But you have a super strong seal that doesn't match your abilities." Hearing this, Julian stared wide-eyed in disbelief. Carnelian responded with a smile. Meanwhile, on the tense battlefield, with Nightlie joining in, the situation was quickly brought under control. But not far away, a figure was watching Lie. She really hasn't changed at all, whether before or now, still looking fragile yet incredibly strong. Then he drew his sword and charged at Lie. Lie's sixth sense made her detect the danger. She immediately turned and swung her sword. The man smiled and said, "Long time no see, Lie." Lie held her sword with both hands, struggling to block, and angrily said, "So it's you, Jared." This sword was covered in poison, but Lie didn't dodge, instead blocking it with her arm, because only she could stop Jared now, and the longer this dragged on, the worse it would be for them. So Lie didn't block with her sword, but thrust her sword hard into Jared's kidney. But this attack wasn't completely successful, only causing Jared superficial damage. But this shocked him. He hadn't expected Lie would sacrifice herself to try to kill him. Meanwhile, the poison began spreading rapidly. Lie's body could no longer move. Jared seized the opportunity, preparing to deliver a fatal blow to Lie. But just as he charged forward with his sword, his seal showed a terrified expression, warning him of approaching danger. The next second, something crashed down hard in front of Jared. As the dust gradually cleared, two figures slowly appeared. There stood Carnelian holding her great sword, saying, "Aren't you two a bit too much? Ganging up on one person when you're both grown-ups?" Seeing Carnelian, Lie was very surprised. She hadn't expected the wandering knight Julian would choose to help. Carnelian raised her sword, saying, "Let me end this battle." Seeing Carnelian, Karina was shocked, because the person before her was the enemy who had killed her previous master. Now with her enemy before her eyes, Karina angrily shouted, "I'll kill you!" With that, she swung her fists at Carnelian, but was easily blocked by the great sword. "Isn't your greeting a bit too rough?" But when she saw the other's appearance, her eyes showed some shock, so she swung her sword to force Karina back, then asked, "I think I've seen you somewhere before, so you still remember what you did." But just as Karina was about to attack again, she was stopped by Jared. Carnelian's appearance had had disrupted his plans. Their side was now at a tactical disadvantage, so he immediately decided to abandon the battle. But Karina didn't want to give up this chance for revenge. Hearing this, Jared sternly questioned, "Are you planning to disobey my orders? Do you want to die?" As a seal, Karina could only reluctantly accept Jared's command. Seeing Carnelian's disdainful look, Karina said hatefully, "Just you wait, I'll come find you soon." All right, I'll wash up and wait for you." As Jared led his people away, this battle also ended. When he returned to Hemmen's military camp, Commander O'Neill angrily questioned why he didn't keep his promise. Their side was about to break through the enemy's defenses, but Jared retorted, "You're the one who broke the promise. Besides Lai and Icarus, there was another seal there, and a highest level one at that." O'Neill was shocked. "You mean Lizenbell has another knight as powerful as Lai?" Hearing this, Jared berated him, "You're really useless, not even fully grasping the enemy's combat strength." O'Neill then realized that rumored ruthless wandering knight had perhaps decided to pledge loyalty to Lizenbell. At this, Jared told O'Neill the contract was void, and mockingly told him, "You can spread word that I ruined this sure victory. After all, it would be too cruel if the weak weren't even allowed to brag." Meanwhile, though Lai was out of mortal danger, she needed to return to the royal city quickly to completely cure the poison. But what troubled her most was why Jared would appear before her as an enemy mercenary. He was talking about having me bear his children just 2.5 years ago. Just then a knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. Someone brought a fruit basket to visit Lai, and they were told they needed to go to Lizenbell's royal city, because His Majesty wanted to express gratitude to the two who had protected Belsheba. Unexpectedly, Julian suddenly confessed he wasn't a knight, just a cook who could kill whales. But Knight Lai wasn't surprised at all, saying she had guessed it already. "But your help to Lizenbell was an undeniable fact." Carnelian also advised from the side, "Go accept the praise, you'll definitely get a big reward." Then she raised her hand to ask Lai, "I see you and Jared seem to know each other. You seem to be fighting to the death, but didn't really want to kill each other." Seeing Knight Lai lost in thought, Carnelian hurriedly said it was fine if she wasn't comfortable talking about it. It turned out they not only had the same master, but had once been engaged. Just as Julian was curious why they became enemies, Carnelian suddenly sensed a dangerous presence. Icarus quickly moved to protect Lai. The next second, the windows started shattering. Carnelian immediately grabbed Julian to dodge, while Icarus quickly deployed a protective shield. Then Jared appeared with his seal. "I've come to settle this, Lai. Raise your sword." Just as Carnelian was about to help, a fist suddenly came at her. Though she barely dodged it, her face was still injured. Karina continued attacking without pause, and drove Carnelian out of the room. For a moment she was overwhelmed. Looking at Karina, who had followed, Carnelian was very angry. "Are you really serious?" Meanwhile, Jared raised his sword, saying, "The interfering ones are gone. Do you think this puppet seal can stop me?" Just then Lai ordered Icarus to protect Julian. The battle with Jared had to be ended by herself. This arrangement also surprised Jared. He hadn't expected Lai to be so composed while injured, but he wasn't one to show mercy to women. Lai, with unresolved poison, couldn't possibly match him. Jared even gloated that Knight Lai would die here today, yet he hesitated to deliver the final blow. Looking at the panting Lai, Jared couldn't help but mock her. "Look at how helpless you are now. What a waste of the Blue Raptor title." With that, he slashed at Lai again, knocking the weapon from her hand. Lai could no longer fight, falling to her knees. The next second, Jared's sword pointed at her. Now Lai was actually finished, but just as he raised his sword to strike, his sword was knocked away. Icarus had broken his resonance with Lai, disobeying her orders to intervene. Lai asked in disbelief how he had done it. Icarus explained that seals must protect their master no matter what, but this also angered Jared, who swung his fist at Icarus. Icarus immediately raised a defensive shield, but under Jared's continuous punches, the shield was finally broken. Icarus was badly injured. Just as Jared was about to kill him with one sword strike, Lai suddenly appeared and knocked him back. "Aren't I the one you're looking for? So leave others alone." Seeing Lai's fighting spirit restored, Jared suddenly lowered his sword. Then he suddenly started laughing. "Finally you show me the face I know, the human Lai hidden behind the knight's mask." With that, he actually sheathed his sword and left. But after he left, Lai found something left on the ground, and this was Jared's antidote. Now the two were preparing to head to the royal city, unaware that this journey would be extremely dangerous. It turned out that far away in Hespabakong, the emperor had already received orders from the first emperor of Oban Bahar to capture Carnelian alive, and had sent out the country's high-level knight, who possessed 2 high-level seals. Capturing the current Carnelian for him was almost overkill. Carnelian looked at Julian, who hadn't spoken the whole way, feeling guilty. Could she have gone too far? It turned out that last night, Julian had asked Carnelian if her previous name was Jirang. Although Carnelian admitted it, she refused to tell Julian about her past. Julian hadn't pressed further. She thought the matter had passed, but apparently it hadn't. Just as Carnelian didn't know what to do, Julian suddenly spoke up. "I'm so tired, Carnelian. Will there really be a village on the way?" Carnelian finally realized He was just too tired to talk, so she immediately pointed ahead saying, "It's just 2.5 kilometers away. You'll definitely make it before you die." When the two finally arrived at the village, unexpectedly they were targeted. Hey, you two! If you want to enter this village, you'll have to pay a toll first. If you don't have money, that sword taller than me will do. Looking at this bluffing kid, Carnelian couldn't help but laugh out loud. This action also annoyed Raspel. "Don't laugh! I'm Blue Raptor Lady Lie's most beloved knight!" But this just made Carnelian laugh even harder, master. "Look at this little one's extraordinary spirit. You should learn from him," Raspel said angrily. "No matter how crazy this world gets, underage children can't possibly become knights. If you keep lying, you'll be disciplined by that knight over there." Hearing that Julian was a knight, Raspel's eyes immediately lit up. "Are you really a knight, sir? Please guide my archery. I must become stronger because I have people I need to protect." But Julian sadly refused him, telling him he wasn't actually a knight. When they got to the inn later, Carnelian asked Julian why he refused the child's request, as it didn't match his soft-hearted nature. Julian said dejectedly, "He looked so sincere, I couldn't deceive him. I won't pretend to be a knight anymore, because being a knight isn't something you can fake with just words. Besides, being a cook isn't bad. After all, I got such a nice room in exchange for helping with cooking tomorrow, right?" Carnelian wiped some dust from the room and said with disgust that this was really nice indeed. To lighten the gloomy mood, Carnelian suggested getting a drink. Julian said he had never drunk alcohol before. "Well then, there's nothing we can do. Since you're still a child, I'll go by myself." Hearing this, Julian got very angry. "You're the child who's lived for over 2,000 years. It's just alcohol I can drink forever." Seeing this, Carnelian showed a victorious smile. 2.5 minutes later, Julian suddenly felt the whole world spinning. Carnelian laughed and said, "Maybe it's not the world that's spinning, but something else?" Julian directly retorted, "You're right, it's not the world spinning, it's you spinning." With that, he crashed face first onto the bar counter. Now it's not spinning anymore. Just as Carnelian was lamenting how bad his alcohol tolerance was, a man suddenly approached trying to hit on her. He only got told to get lost, but the man didn't leave and reached out his lecherous hand. Seeing this, Carnelian looked at him with murderous intent. The man was scared and quickly backed away. "Then I'll come back when you don't want to drink alone." But after the man left, the innkeeper was staring at Carnelian from afar. When discovered by Carnelian, he hurriedly turned his head away. This made Carnelian very puzzled. Could she be overly sensitive from drinking too much? The beautiful singing fairy before us is the top performer here. All fairies are born singers. Though a male fairy, he possesses beauty, surpassing even female fairies. That's how Melquint became the star performer here. But his tragic past and slave status fill his songs with sorrow. Even passing dogs would cry upon hearing them. But thankfully, someone has always protected him, giving him a glimmer of hope in his miserable life. The next day, Julian wakes up from his hangover. The owner harshly orders him to cook, but just as he's showing off his skills, Melquint suddenly appears in the kitchen and asks him for a drink of water. Looking at Melquint, who maintains grace even while drinking water, Julian's weathered face unexpectedly turns red. This woman is incredibly stunning. Just then, Raspel suddenly appears, having come to find Melquint. Upon seeing Julian, he angrily points and shouts, "You sneaky fake knight! What tricks are you trying to play on my Melquint?" Fortunately, Melquint quickly explains that he came for water himself, which makes Raspel drop his hostile attitude, but he still waves his wooden sword warning Julian, "If you dare bully Melquint, I'll stab you with my sword." Then proudly tells Melquint, "I'll stake my honor as a knight to protect you." He bids farewell to Melquint and happily runs off to practice swordsmanship. But just as he reaches the door, he bumps into someone. The person is that same man who tried to harass Carnelian. "Watch where you're going, you brat." But when he sees Melquint, he immediately whistles, "Isn't this the fairy from yesterday?" Getting closer, he remarks that there's more than just grace about him. His offensive manner makes Raspel very angry. He raises his wooden sword and strikes the man from behind. Though the blow isn't strong, it's extremely insulting. The man angrily knocks Raspel to the ground with one punch, but Raspel shakily stands up again, raising his sword to shield Melquint. The confused man decides to drop his act. Drawing his weapon, he says menacingly, "Do you know who I am? I'm Jared the Fierce, who kills children without blinking. Today I'll cut off your hand so you can never wave that sword around again." Just then Julian angrily shouts, "Stop, you imposter! Who gave you the courage to impersonate Jared? I saw him clearly when he drew that demonic sword in Belsheba." Hearing this, the man sneers, "You say you were at that battlefield? One look and I can tell you're just a third-rate cook. What a braggart." Hearing himself called a third-rate cook, Julian decides to drop his act. "I am Julian, the wandering knight who saved Belsheba." But hearing this, the man bursts into laughter. "If you're that knight, I'll eat my own shit standing on my head." Then switching to a malicious smile, "If what you say is true, then let me test this legendary wandering knight." But just as he's about to attack, two people suddenly fall from above, followed by Carnelian jumping down. Looking at this man who disgusts her, Carnelian raises her greatsword. "You bastard, how dare you disrespect Sir Knight?" With those words, she strikes him down, then smiles at Julian saying, "Master, why did you hide your true identity?" The events before him leave Julian confused, so he asks Carnelian what's going on. It turns out these people are human traffickers traffickers, and the two were sold to them by the inn owner. When Raspel thanks Julian for saving their lives, just as he's about to explain that he was only lying to deceive the opponent, Carnelon steps on his foot. Looking at Julian, who swallowed his words, Carnelon secretly smiles. Really now, there's no need to hide it anymore. 2.5 hours later, Julian and Carnelon leave the inn. After the inn owner, sporting a pig-like face, sees them off, Julian thinks Carnelon has changed and no longer kills randomly, but Carnelon says somewhat dejectedly, I did want to kill him yesterday. The reason she spared his life was because he agreed to free Melquint, but having finally gained freedom, he has nowhere to go, as his homeland was long destroyed, and his people scattered across the lands, so Julian invites him to join them. Carnelon agrees, saying that since knights aren't very capable, having a ferry around would be better. But before leaving, Melquint asks them to wait, as he has something to take care of. 2.5 hours later, Melquint returns as promised, and the three set out on their journey to the royal city. Soon, Julian is gasping for breath, while Melquint appears quite relaxed, explaining that among male fairies his stamina is considered the best. Julian unconsciously nods, but the next second, both Julian and Carnelon show surprised expressions. You're actually male? So Melquint tells them about his experience of being castrated. He was originally a proper male fairy, but because the lady of the house took a liking to him, the master had him castrated, turning him into a female fairy. But Julian doesn't understand what castration means. Carnelon has to explain it with an analogy, frightening Julian so much his hair stands on end. Just as the three arrive at the Lisenbell royal city, ready to start their new lives, Raspel has already become a tearful mess, because he doesn't know how to live without Melquint. Meanwhile, the inn owner is angry about losing Melquint, when suddenly the wall cracks, then three figures break through. A large foot steps directly onto the owner. Hey pig, have you seen Red-Eyed Seal? When Lai returns to the royal city to report to the emperor specifically instructs her to wear a dress for the upcoming ball. If she finds someone she likes at the ball, he would use his royal authority to help arrange the marriage. Dressed up, Lai doesn't look like a knight at all. Looking at the wedding dress-like gown, Lai recalls painful memories. She and Jared should have been married long ago. Lai had even secretly snuck into the room with the wedding dress, looking forward to the moment she would wear it. But the day before the wedding, Icarte suddenly told her that Jared had killed all her family members and then vanished. The painful memories make her lose interest in trying on the dress. She leaves dejectedly. Unexpectedly, she runs into Carnelon. Seeing the fairy with Julian, Lai is very curious. Julian quickly introduces Melquint and indicates that she is as reliable a companion as Carnelon. Carnelon curiously asks Lai if she's going somewhere. Lai tells them she just bought a dress for the ball. Hearing this, Carnelon sighs disappointedly. I can't even wear a dress because I haven't found the right master. Lai immediately offers, you can all choose one, just put it on my account. Carnelion's eyes immediately light up as she grabs Lai's hands. Thank you so much! But just then, Jared suddenly appears behind Lai. I wonder if I'll see the blue raptor in a dress at tonight's ball. Lai immediately assumes a battle stance. How dare you come here? But Jared calmly pulls out a royal invitation. Lisenbell's hospitality is really poor, drawing swords against invited guests. When she sees the seal on the invitation, Lai recognizes it as Crown Prince Bebelin's personal seal. But why would the Crown Prince invite him? Before Lai can respond, Jared turns away gracefully. Whatever the case, I'm very much looking forward to tonight's ball. See you then. Then Julian and his companions go to the dress shop. It's his first time wearing such formal attire and he feels uncomfortable, but Melquint's compliments make him very happy. Melquint also puts on a shining dress, but Carnelon still hasn't chosen, so Julian urges her to hurry or they'll be late. After some fussing around, Carnelon finally chooses a dress. I've chosen this one. On the way to the ball, Julian keeps stealing glances at Carnelon, but gets startled when Carnelon catches him. Melquint thoughtfully offers to carry Carnelion's sword. Julian wants to help, but Carnelon dismisses him. You better not, you probably couldn't last a few minutes. Soon they arrive at the castle. The splendid scenery inside leaves Julian in awe. Just then, two attendants rush over. Are you the famous knight, Julian? Is this beautiful lady your love? Julian frantically waves his hands, saying no. Carnelon quickly introduces herself. I am Sir Knight Seal. Both are deliberately trying to win Julian over for different princes, and start arguing about it. Just then, Knight Lai appears. What are you doing? After scolding the two, she leads the three to the ball. Carnelon asks Lai why she isn't wearing a dress, and why the royal atmosphere feels strangely tense. Even the ball attendees are wearing swords. Lai explains helplessly that currently, due to Lisenbell's succession issues, supporters of the Crown Prince and Second Prince are in opposition. It turns out that, although the Crown Prince is the legal heir, the Second Prince not only has good character, but is also capable in handling state affairs. So many officials choose to follow him. Hearing this, Carnelon jokes, so it's a battle between an incompetent elder brother and a capable younger brother. What a cliché story. The woman has lived for tens of thousands of years, but has never opened her eyes. Even more surprisingly, she is the mother of seals. The first emperor, Oben Barha, promised her that no matter what, he would bring Jarong before her. But what puzzles her is that the one who awakened Jarong wasn't Hessen. As the mother of seals, you should know who it is. Why do I feel like the whole world is deceiving me? Meanwhile, the ball finally begins. But since Julian doesn't know how to dance, Carnelon has to teach him on the spot. To Melquint's beautiful singing, Carnelon happily asks, do you want to dance too? Under Carnelion's guidance, After 2.5 turns, Julian somehow learns to dance, though it's your first time. You're not bad at all. Just then, a servant appears breathlessly. Apparently, the king is looking for them. Carnelon is already eager to receive rewards. Let's go, my Sir Knight. Meanwhile, Jared, who is wandering around, is suddenly ambushed. His attacker is Knight Lai. You once tried to defeat Lizenbell, now you casually come to attend the ball. What are you planning? Jared smiles and says, I'm not interested in such a small country. You should know why I'm doing this, Karina. But Lai says, don't call me that. I am now Knight Lai of Lizenbell. And why did you name your seal after my former name? Hearing her insist on being Knight Lai, Jared becomes angry. How long are you going to be a dog? To those fools who put the kingdom in danger, they only hinder you from becoming a greater knight. Just wait and see, you'll know how naive you are. When everyone arrives at the Great Hall, the Emperor expresses gratitude for Julian's help, but Julian says he hasn't really done much. This infuriates Carnelon. Fortunately, the king doesn't mind, and even invites him to become a knight of Lizenbell. Just thinking about becoming a royal knight and getting a mansion and farmland, living a shameless life, makes Carnelon very excited, but Julian refuses. Carnelon is absolutely furious that he kicked away such good fortune that came knocking, just as the king wants to try persuading him again. The crown prince suddenly stands up. Your Majesty, pardon my interruption. What Lizenbell needs most now is not excellent knights but stable royal authority. You must quickly designate an heir. Ministers supporting the second prince also step forward, urging him to quickly determine the heir. Such behavior makes the king very angry. All of you shut up. How dare you engage in power struggles at an occasion meant to welcome guests? Has greed blinded you so much that you've lost all dignity? Originally, the king planned to announce the heir sometime later, but announcing the heir at this victory celebration would also be a good choice, and the king designates second Prince Lance as heir. Such a result is unacceptable to the crown prince. He kneels and begs the king to redesignate him as heir, but receives the king's rebuke, who reveals his assassination of political opponents and private army training. If someone like you sits on the throne, your greed will ultimately lead Lizenbell to destruction. The crown prince, losing all hope, loses his mind, suddenly draws his sword and stabs at his father. Lai immediately rushes to stop him, but being too far away, she can't stop it in time, can only point her sword at the crown prince in frustration. Lai, a royal knight pointing a sword at royalty, does this seem right? Don't make me doubt your loyalty to the royal family. With that, he raises his sword and shouts, as the king of Lizenbell, I order you to completely seal off the royal city. Today I will kill all the treacherous ministers who oppose my succession. Then countless soldiers rush in, surrounding everyone present. Jared also appears beside the crown prince. Then the crown prince asks Julian, if you're willing to follow me, I'll give you wealth and honor beyond imagination. Julian firmly refuses him, because he won't collaborate with someone who killed their own father. Hearing this, the crown prince points his sword at Julian. What an ungrateful fellow. Lai, kill this guy first. But Lai not only doesn't act, she even throws away her sword and announces her resignation from knighthood. From this moment on, she will no longer follow royal orders, but will protect Lizenbell according to her own will. The crown prince angrily orders his men to kill Lai, but no one moves. They not only fear Lai's great strength, they are even more unwilling to attack such a selfless knight. So the crown prince orders Jared to kill everyone who defies him, but Jared tells him very fiercely, I only agreed to come to the ball, so don't order me around casually. But thanks to you, Lai finally gave up her knighthood. The change in situation makes Carnelon very happy. This way it will be easier to kill this crazy prince. But just then, Melquint senses an ominous presence. When he pushes open the balcony doors, the city before them is already engulfed in flames. Lai immediately orders Ecartes to move everyone to safety. But just then, the hall doors suddenly open. The newcomer is Sadday, who is hunting Carnelon. Lai immediately recognizes him. But what she can't understand is why this black cardinal, who has power greater than ordinary kings and only takes orders from the first emperor, would appear here. Fortunately, Saad hasn't seen Carnelon, so he orders the king here to see him. The crown prince immediately rushes over, shouting, I am the king of Lizenbell. A minister quickly steps forward, telling Saad that second Prince Lance is the country's king. Seeing the old king lying in a pool of blood, Sadday also understands what happened, so he orders Seal Juliet to release flames, burning the crown prince alive. Then he walks to second Prince Lance. Now you are the king here, bring the red-eyed seal before me. This is first Emperor Obenbarha's order. If you can't do it, then I'll kill one by one until I find them. At this point, Carnelon finally realizes the danger. Fortunately, Lai steps forward because she cannot allow Saad to kill innocents in Lizenbell. But this suddenly excites Saad, because he is very curious what a female knight's screams sound like. But just one exchange leaves Lai shocked for 2 seconds, because Saad not only didn't draw his sword, but blocked arrows with his arm. It turns out, his arm has magic. Each collision's shock makes Lai's arms extremely painful. Saad even mocks Lai, saying there's no need to draw his sword to fight her. Then Seal Juliet and Justin release magic. Under the assault of ice and fire, Lai can only struggle to defend. Sadday seizes the opportunity to sneak attack, directly grabbing her throat. Now let me hear the blue raptor's screams, but the next second, a red light light flashes, Jared suddenly strikes and cuts off Sad's arm and warns him unfriendly, "If you have business with Lai, you should get in line. After all I've been waiting for so long." Seeing Jared, Sadday puts away his contemptuous attitude, drawing his sword directly. Seeing this, Jared also becomes serious because he had long heard rumors about this sword. Reportedly, no one could block it more than 5 times. But now it looks more like a tool for enhancing magic power. When Sadday uses his sword to release magic, the invisible sonic attack causes everyone great pain. Looking at Jared, who appears slightly pained, Shad proudly tells him, "The stronger your attack, the stronger the shock you'll receive. Your entire body will be rejected by the magic." But Jared doesn't believe it, charging straight in. Justin immediately releases ice magic to block. Seeing this, Karina also takes action. Though she shatters the ice magic's defense with one punch, Juliet immediately releases fire magic to defend. Meanwhile, Jared has successfully approached Sadday, but his attack is not only easily blocked by Sadday, he also receives the shock from the sword's magic. This forces him to quickly retreat away from Sadday. At the same time, Juliet and Justin join forces, suppressing Karina. "You were very brave just now, but do you have the courage to try again? Blocking my sword brings pain, but if you don't block, you might die painlessly. Choose one." Just then, Lai suddenly appears beside Jared, but even in such a dangerous and tense situation, Jared suddenly asks Lai, "After we kill this guy, will you come live in the south with me?" Hearing these words, Lai actually blushes a bit. "Let's deal with this guy first, then I'll think about it." But while the two are dealing with Sadday, Carnelon has already pulled Julian. Escaping from Lisenbell, Julian feels they should help Lai. But Carnelon gets angry. "Master, don't meddle in others' affairs. We're not in a position to help others right now. That guy called Sadday is looking for me, so running away is helping. If we're caught by the Emperor, we're finished." But these words make Julian very confused. "You've been asleep for over 500 years. Why would the Emperor be looking for you?" Hearing this, Carnelon suddenly becomes somewhat sad. It seems 500 years is still too short. Not enough to escape that person's control. Meanwhile, Sadday, holding his severed arm, also leaves Lisenbell, continuing to hunt for the red-eyed seal. Juliet asks if he needs reinforcements, but Sadday refuses. Hunting those who fled in fear is more interesting. Soon, news of the seal's escape reaches the Empire. But Reut, head of Imperial security, isn't angry and is actually happy. He doesn't plan to let Sadday take the credit. His adopted son suggests sending people to ambush at the Pike Mountains, because to escape Oban Barha's pursuit, they can only go to Derkart, which isn't under Imperial influence, and the Pike Mountains are on the only route there. Meanwhile, after 2 days of non-stop fleeing, Julian's stamina has reached its limit, and their escape route is indeed towards Derkart, but at their current pace it would take 2 years to reach. Julian thinks this time is too long. Carnelon suddenly asks him, "Do you know why it takes so long?" "Because fish schools adjust their speed to match the slowest fish." Julian doesn't understand what this means. Carnelon angrily shouts to tell him, "It means what should only take a week needs 2 years because of someone who's deadly slow." Julian yells back, "I know," then continues walking. But after just 2 meters, he stops. "Since it's going to take 2 years anyway, can we rest a bit before continuing?" "Carnelon, I really can't walk anymore." Fortunately, with Melquint's persuasion, Carnelon finally agrees to rest, but she doesn't want to talk to Julian. Just then, there's a rustling sound nearby. Then a wild boar jumps out. Julian is so scared he hugs Carnelon. When he realizes what he's done, he immediately turns away embarrassed. But then there's a rumbling sound nearby. When Julian looks up, 2 tall orcs appear before him. Carnelon immediately shields the two, asking what business they have. It turns out they're hunting that beast, and rudely ask Carnelon where the beast went. They even contemptuously say humans are disgusting. This makes Carnelon very angry. She directly kicks the orc down with her left leg. "I don't care if you hate humans, but why are you taking it out on me? And I'm a seal, got it? How do I look human? You stupid orc who can't even tell a seal from a human." Looking at the violent Carnelon, the two are terrified. Just then a human rushes out, shouting for Carnelon to stop her brutal treatment of his friends. But when he sees Carnelion's breathtaking beauty, he directly slides on his knees before Carnelon. "My name is Sio. May I ask your beautiful name?" This makes Julian very speechless. Did he really come to mediate? Even worse, he directly grabs Carnelion's hand. Such a sudden action startles Carnelon, who immediately pulls her hand back. Carnelion's reaction of hiding behind Julian makes Melquint very surprised. So Lady Carnelon becomes more helpless when facing this kind of person. When learning that Julian is Carnelion's master, Sio becomes very angry. Shameless fellow, actually treating such a beautiful woman as a slave. Hearing slave makes Carnelon very angry, but her angry appearance in Sio's eyes is still so charming, angering Carnelon into giving him an uppercut. Looking at the 2 fleeing orcs, Julian laughs awkwardly. From the result, he did save his friends. "Should we stop Lady Carnelon?" "We should, but I can't stop her. Why don't you try?" The girl slept for 20 years. Everyone thought she would never wake, but the man firmly believed she would wake up. Just when the villagers were forcing him to sell the girl, Sio suddenly returns. "Whoever dares touch a hair on Amarillis, I'll make them end up like me." Leto looks puzzled. "Son, what's wrong with you?" Carnelon shows a friendly smile as she sends Sio flying. "Nothing much, just some love from a beautiful lady." Sio quickly introduces to everyone, "They are guests I met, although this man is unremarkable. The fairy and lady with him are very beautiful." Leto takes the opportunity of greeting guests to send the villagers away. But while they are drinking tea, Carnelon tastes that the tea leaves are from Zulihul, that famous vacation destination that disappeared over 100 years ago. This surprises Leto, so he asks if Carnelon is a seal. Carnelon Carnelon not only happily confirms but also praises Leto's eyesight as being much better than his son's. But Seo doesn't know what a seal is, even thinking they're no different from slaves, which greatly angers Carnelon. His father can only explain to him, a seal is a being who lives to awaken their trainer under the guidance of fate. Hearing this explanation, Seo immediately kneels before Carnelon. It seems our meeting was arranged by fate, let me awaken you. But gets kicked flying by Carnelon. I'm already awake, you fool. What puzzles Carnelon is why they want to sell that girl. It turns out the orcs near the village often hunt the villagers' trained wild boar pagey, thus creating conflicts with the villagers. To this, Melquint expresses understanding, because from the orcs' perspective, it's hard to understand that wild boar pagey belongs to humans. So the villagers called in mercenaries, wanting to subdue the orcs. But the mercenaries keep pressing the village for payment. Therefore, the poor villagers thought of selling Amarillis. Carnelon expresses wanting to see that seal. So, under Seo's guidance, everyone comes to Amarillis' room. But after observing for 2.5 minutes, Carnelon says this seal is strange, because even with sleeping seals she can sense some aura, but she can't sense any aura or power from this child. Seo excitedly says nearby that he will awaken such a pure and delicate Amarillis no matter what. But Julian solemnly tells him, don't guess her personality before she wakes up. When Carnelon was sleeping, I also thought she was pure and delicate. Before he can finish speaking, Carnelon comes over. What did you just say? Frightening Julian into silence. Then he says to Seo, you think just anyone can awaken a seal? But Seo points at Julian saying, such a weak person awakened you. Why can't I? How dare you look down on my master? Although he's not impressive at all, he did awaken super powerful me. Julian, feeling belittled, holds back his anger. Not daring to look at Carnelon, he just turns around and mutters, cooks are also great. But just then a voice comes, please tell me your name. Julian is confused. Why say it again? Did you forget my name? Carnelon. But Melquint surprisingly tells Julian, it wasn't Lady Carnelon who asked, only to see the girl looking at Julian saying, please say my name. The two are completely shocked. What is going on? I'm just a cook, not a powerful knight. But the girl still asks Julian to say her name. Seo suddenly interrupts the girl and tells her your name is Amarillis. I've been waiting for you to wake up, but is ignored by the girl, who turns back to continue asking Julian her name. This greatly angers Seo. Did you deliberately get close to me just to steal Amarillis? Seeing this, Julian turns to look at Carnelon. Let's run first. With that, he escapes from the bedroom. Carnelon quickly follows. Melquint very politely bids farewell to the village chief and leaves too, leaving only the girl continuously mumbling Julian's name. Carnelon comforts him. We're already being hunted by First Emperor Odin Barha. One more seal won't make much difference. But Julian isn't comforted. Just then Melquint says he smells alcohol. Julian immediately gets excited. There's nothing a drink can't solve. If there is, then have another. With that, he excitedly rushes toward the tavern. Looking at Julian running away, Carnelon tells Melquint a little-known secret. It turns out people misunderstand that only humans can awaken seals. The real key is that only powerful beings who can control seals can manifest seals. But this makes Melquint even more confused. Then what about Master Julian? To this, Carnelon believes, powerful must have many meanings. This extremely weak master must have some powerful aspect I don't know about. But when Julian arrives at the tavern, the server tells him there's no more alcohol, because all the alcohol was bought by these mercenaries who are subduing the orcs. Just then, Carnelon and Melquint also arrive at the tavern. The mercenaries immediately get excited. Who would have thought such a remote place would have such beautiful ladies and fairies? They even rudely tell Carnelon to pour drinks for them, to keep them company, and threaten Julian to leave his companions and quietly get out, or they'll kill him. But Julian not only doesn't leave, instead he directly goes to the mercenary leader, snatches his sword. If you're confident, then try to kill me. The mercenary leader is directly frightened by this aura and falls to the ground, continuously backing away, asking fearfully if Julian is a knight. Julian plays with the short sword and says ominously, you're asking so many questions when you're already dead. After 1 second of contemplation, the mercenary leader decisively flees the tavern and leaves harsh words. Remember this, you punk? We're leaving because we don't want trouble. Julian collapses into a chair. That really scared me. This series of actions truly stuns Carnelon. Are you crazy? Why suddenly start bluffing? You've never done this before. Julian smilingly tells her, I just wanted to teach a lesson to people who treat you casually, and before you were always helping me teach others lessons. Hearing these words, Carnelon actually blushes, but turns away pretending not to care, saying, what kind of master protects their seal? What a strange person. Just then, the server comes to thank Julian. Thanks to him, they could drive away those freeloaders. To thank him, they bring out good food and drink to treat him. Carnelon is also unusually gentle toward him. When the three finish their pleasant meal, Julian packs up, ready to continue toward Derkart. But Carnelon changes into the clothes she wore when first discovered, and asks Julian to say her name. Julian tells her to stop joking. Carnelon suddenly grabs his hand, urgently asking him to say her name. This phrase keeps appearing in Julian's ears. With a scream, Julian wakes from his dream. But just when he thinks it was just a dream, he finds someone holding his hand. Then he hears the most terrifying words, please say my name. But Julian not only didn't give her a name, he kept avoiding her. This also caused her to remain in a state of contract formation, unable to think. Seeing Julian's awkward appearance, Carnelian couldn't help but want to tease him. How about I go tell her you're here? Julian didn't know what to do anymore. One constantly following him asking for a name, the other looking like she wanted to kill him, telling him to stay away from Amarillis. But Carnelian thought he should give that seal a name, although this would be unfair to Seal. A seal who awakens without forming a contract could likely face danger. And finally, Julian revealed the reason for his avoidance. Because I'm your master, hasn't your power weakened? I don't want to make other seals unfortunate as well. Hearing this, Carnelian fell silent. She hugged Julian and gently comforted him. Even if you have the strongest master in the world, it doesn't mean that Seal would be happy. Undeniably, meeting a very weak master seems to have a high probability of becoming unfortunate. But before Carnelian could finish speaking, Julian pushed her away, so I must escape now. Having said that, he quickly prepared to find another hiding place. Seal. Carnelian smiled and continued, I haven't become unfortunate, master. Just as Carnelian worried, Amarillis was now lost in the forest and was discovered by a group of mercenaries. Seeing that she was quite pretty, they planned to capture her and sell her for money. But seeing that the newcomer wasn't Julian, Amarillis simply turned and left. This also confirmed to the mercenaries that this woman was mentally unstable. She didn't even know how to resist, so they developed evil intentions toward her. Meanwhile, Julian was still looking for a place to hide when Seo suddenly appeared, questioning him about where he had hidden Amarillis. Julian quickly denied it, saying he had been hiding from her for a day already. This made Seo somewhat distraught, as he hadn't seen Amarillis for a day. Looking at Seo, who didn't understand the situation, Carnelian told him, once a seal recognizes a master, even if you search for her, she won't hear what you say. But Seo said, so what? I don't know what a seal is, nor do I know what will happen to Amarillis in the future, but there's one thing I'm certain of, which is that I will do my best for the being I like. Even if I get hurt, I don't mind. After saying this, he turned and left to search for Amarillis. Carnelian shrugged helplessly. I didn't expect there would be another person here who makes me feel as depressed as you. But just as she finished speaking, she heard Julian saying he would go find Amarillis together. What will you do after finding her? Of course, return her to Seo, and then I'll continue running away. Hearing this, Melquint suddenly appeared, so we don't need to hide anymore, right? Meanwhile, Seo discovered a line of footprints. He hurriedly followed the footprints, and soon caught up with the mercenaries. And the mercenaries were about to harm Amarillis, so Seo immediately ambushed one of the mercenaries, and shouted angrily for those bastards to stop. The bald man immediately ordered his subordinates to teach him a lesson. The subordinate cursed as he walked towards Seo. Unexpectedly, Seo suddenly struck, cleaving his skull with one sword strike. This act of dying due to excessive talking greatly angered the bald man. He directly ordered his subordinates to attack together. But Seo, with his agile movements practiced for 2 years, not only easily dealt with the subordinates, but also beat the bald man until he sat on the ground begging for mercy. But Seo didn't intend to let him off so easily. He couldn't tolerate them wanting to do such despicable things to a child. But just then, he was stabbed through the chest from behind, and the bald man stood up again. It's because you don't know your own limits. That's why you'll die so early. After saying this, he repeatedly stabbed Seo, then shouted at the subordinates lying on the ground, stop pretending to be dead. Get up. Seo, not yet completely dead, trembled as he crawled towards Amarillis. What a funny guy, you're dying and still trying to show off in front of a woman. After saying this, he threw Seo next to Amarillis. Now you can watch what happens to the person you like. But just then, something miraculous happened. Amarillis turned her head and spoke to Seo. Although Seo had imagined countless times what she would look like speaking to him, at this moment he couldn't hear any sound, nor could he make a sound. Just then, Julian and the others finally found this place. Melquint immediately saw the dying Seo. Julian shouted, "What have you all done?" And the mercenaries recognized Julian at a glance. "Boss, this guy is the one who tried to kill us yesterday." But before they could move to cut off Julian's head, Carnelian swung her great sword, instantly killing all the little thugs. Although I don't want to help SEO, but you people really deserve to die. This terrifying combat power frightened the mercenaries. They immediately turned and fled. Carnelian wanted to chase and kill them, but was stopped by Julian, who begged her to use magic to save Seo. But Carnelian had no way, because he had been stabbed many times in the chest and was beyond saving, and her own abilities were only destruction and slaughter. She had no talent in saving people. But just when Julian felt utterly desperate, a pair of pure white hands were placed on Seo's chest, because Amarillis had a magical ability. As long as she placed her hands on the chest, even a dying person could be revived. After waking up, Seo was puzzled, though his life had been worth it. How did he come back to life? When he saw the smiling Amarillis, he asked if she had saved him, but Amarillis didn't answer him. Instead, she said something that shocked Carnelian. "Please tell me your name." She was extremely shocked, because the seal's contract-binding object had changed. Hearing her actually speaking to him, Seo happily introduced himself. Amarillis looked at him expectantly. "Now please say my name." Seo took her small hand and gently said, "You are Amarillis." "Then Lord Seo, from now on you are my tamer. I will serve you well." Hearing this, Seo was deeply moved. Excitedly, he hugged Amarillis. Being able to see her smile makes my whole life worthwhile. This made Carnelian exclaim it was too cheesy. Then she marveled at how amazing Amarillis's ability was, that she could save a dying person, which made Julian curious if she was more powerful than you. The ability to burn people to ashes, and the ability to create people from ashes. Which do you think is more powerful? But Amarillis seems to be in her first awakening. It's really enviable because she has no past. She can live very happily. Knowing too much is also a kind of trouble. Julian was very confused. So what exactly do you know? That I am a seal who knows I'm a chef, but I'm still very happy being with you. Meanwhile, the escaped bald man suddenly let out a lewd laugh. After calming down, he finally realized who that woman was, but his subordinate said he had never seen such a terrifying woman. You fool, she is the red-eyed seal being hunted throughout the Hesperia territory. Even just reporting would earn a huge reward. Now we can not only make money but also get revenge. They are done for. At this moment, Julian, completely unaware, was troubled by an ingredient. As a chef, he actually didn't know how to use it. This also earned mockery from Seo, but as a chef from a small fishing village, Julian could only angrily say he was good at cooking fish. Looking at the two bickering, Carnelian was also very happy because she hadn't been this relaxed for a long time, but the next second Carnelian became serious again. Now is not the time to be joking around here. Just then, Amarillis suddenly asked her, what is the purpose of Seal's creation? It turned out Amarillis had forgotten about her birth, but Carnelian said she couldn't tell her because of some rules, and it was better that she forgot. Don't worry about those things. Just live happily each day. Although your master, who is like an idiot, will die someday, you have to carry these memories and continue living. Hearing that Seo would die, Amarillis suddenly cried out. Carnelian quickly comforted her, saying it wouldn't happen immediately. Just then, Seo came over. Amarillis immediately nervously said, Lady Carnelian said you will die someday, before she could continue. Seo put his finger on her lips. That won't happen, Amarillis. I couldn't possibly leave you. This mushy scene made Carnelian shudder. Just then, the village chief returned, dejected. It turned out that the village had just held a meeting. The villagers insisted on going to subdue the orcs, because they felt that if orcs attacked wild boars, they might also attack the village. But Seo firmly believed that orcs were a proud race. As long as their territory wasn't invaded, they would absolutely not attack the village. Though the village chief agreed with his opinion, making fearful villagers understand the other side, they would still prefer to make the other side submit. Frightened people will take up knives, brave people will extend their hands. Someday you will understand this truth. But Seo didn't give up, and decided to be the one who extends a hand. He planned to visit the orc village. The village chief thought he should rest more as he had just been injured. But Seo said with Amarillis around, he was completely fine. The village chief sighed with relief, and indicated that he would also try to persuade the villagers. The next day, Seo invited Julian and the others to go with him, which annoyed Carnelian quite a bit, but she still quietly reminded Julian, our current situation doesn't allow us to wander around so freely. Julian expressed concern that the mercenaries might come back for revenge, and said they would run away after helping this once. Carnelian could only reluctantly agree. Soon everyone arrived at the orc village. Looking at the warlike orcs, Julian couldn't help but remark that they were completely different from the orcs he had seen in the city. Melquint told him that enslaved races are bound by a sense of powerlessness. When everyone arrived at the orc leader's tent, they finally met their leader. Long time no see, Seo. She never expected that humans, who usually treat seals as playthings, would treat a seal as a lover, and even request the orc chief to bestow the blessing of the land upon her. This action stunned Carnelian and the others. After all, Amarillis was still a child. The orc chief reminded him that seals couldn't be lovers. That way they couldn't reproduce. But Seo didn't care. After Amarillis received the blessing, the chief wanted to discuss returning Nate with Seo, but Seo said he didn't want Nate back, and came to apologize for the villagers' impolite attitude. This surprised the chief. Then she looked toward Carnelian and said, although I am hundreds of years younger than this seal, I have lived for a long time. This is the first time I've received an apology from a human. Hearing this, Seo directly walked toward the chief and extended his hand. I hope we can coexist peacefully as before, because my father said fearful people take up knives, brave people extend their hands. Julian quickly whispered in his ear, that phrase doesn't literally mean extending your hand. Just then, the chief suddenly said, are you that seal's tamer? It's really strange, you don't look particularly strong. How did you form a contract with that seal? Julian awkwardly said he wasn't sure either, but he could confirm that he wasn't currently a helpful tamer for Carnelian. The chief was speechless, but asked if he regretted forming a contract with Carnelian. Julian indicated he couldn't easily answer this question, but he hoped that when asked this question again 2.5 years later, he could answer with no regrets at all, and for this he would do his utmost. These words shocked Carnelian. Is this still that weak, Julian? Looking at the two humans who were striving for seals, the chief also decided to put aside her prejudice against humans. Although she still couldn't understand the concept of who Nate belonged to, she was willing to make an effort for it. Seo excitedly grabbed his hand, very excitedly praising the chief as a brave orc, but just then, a guard rushed in panic. It turned out that the human army had controlled the entire village, binding all the villagers. Seo was shocked, suspecting the mercenaries had returned for revenge, but actually, the army belonged to Reut, the head of the Imperial Security Department, because she didn't intend to let Sadday steal the merit. After receiving news of the red-eyed seal, she immediately dispatched troops to control the village. Seal quickly bid farewell to the chief. Carnelian and Julian also decided to leave together, watching the departing group. The chief decided to be a brave person and actively extend a hand to humans. At this moment, the commander was interrogating the village head about the whereabouts of the red-eyed seal, but he said he had never seen one. The bald man warned him not to pretend he had seen the red-eyed seal with his own eyes, but the village head still insisted he had never seen such a seal. The commander grabbed him and exposed his lie. If he didn't hand over the seal, he would kill the villagers one by one. The bald man excitedly pointed his sword at a villager to save the innocent villagers. The village head had to reveal Carnelian's whereabouts, having gotten the answer he wanted. The commander told the bald man to release the frightened villager and had him lead the way to the orc village, but everyone else was to be killed. Just as the bald man excitedly prepared to kill the village head, his sword suddenly broke. Then he was immediately cut in half by Carnelian. My cursed popularity. Everywhere I go, there's a bunch of men chasing after me. The commander didn't expect her to deliver herself and alone, but Carnelian said, I'm not fighting alone. The next second, the sound of hooves was heard from afar. A group of orc warriors instantly charged in. With the addition of many orcs, the army was quickly defeated. Seo and the others finally returned, releasing the bound village head and villagers, seeing the commander trying to escape. Carnelian smiled. Do you think you can escape from my hands? But just as she was about to kill the commander, a black shadow suddenly appeared and repelled her. Carnelian was shocked. What is that blob? Carnelian thought the opponent was too clumsy and would definitely move slowly, but the opponent suddenly disappeared and flashed to her side. Carnelian hurriedly blocked with her sword, sliding back 2 meters before finally stopping. The opponent's speed was beyond her belief. The commander triumphantly told her this was a heavy infantry soldier enhanced by magic who could forcibly break through physical limits under magical enhancement. Although they would die soon, they were more than enough to kill seals or knights. Then Carnelian was surrounded by heavy infantry. She immediately realized things were going badly, because there were heavy infantry heading towards Julian. Orc warriors tried to stop the heavy infantry, but were killed with one slash. Then they walked towards Julian. At this moment, Carnelian was fighting with the heavy infantry. She couldn't save him. Just as she was distracted for a moment, she was directly hit by the heavy infantry. The heavy infantry swarmed in. In the critical moment, Carnelian unleashed all her power. Then a surge of lightning power spread out, but it only pushed the heavy infantry back 2.5 steps, and Carnelian also became weak. Seeing the heavy infantry unharmed at all, Carnelian had to change her attack target, first dealing with the mages controlling the heavy infantry, but at this time, Julian was in even more danger. Carnelian had to desperately run towards Julian, but was again blocked by heavy infantry. Although she desperately dealt with one, more heavy infantry soon came forward to block her. Carnelian also suffered serious injuries. Damn it, I couldn't protect my master again. But just as the heavy infantry was about to kill Julian and Carnelian, the sky suddenly darkened. Then a lightning bolt struck down, hitting a heavy infantry soldier holding a lightning rod. As lightning continued to fall, the heavy infantry fell one after another. Carnelian turned her head searching. She was very curious who had used such strong magic. Finally, she discovered a figure emitting electricity in the distance. When everyone looked at him, they all showed extremely shocked expressions. This person was none other than the village chief Leto. It turned out that the village chief was actually a high-level mage, but before everyone could breathe a sigh of relief, Melquint sensed a dangerous aura. Then a fireball descended from the sky. Fortunately, Carnelian blocked the attack. When the flames dispersed, 3 figures slowly appeared. The newcomers were Sadday, who was pursuing Carnelian. The commander excitedly told him, except for the village chief who was a mage and the red-eyed seal, the others were nothing special. But just as he was proudly seeking credit from Sadday, he was directly frozen into an ice sculpture by Justin. I will definitely relay your merits to the emperor. After saying this, he shattered the commander. The mages beside were shocked, screaming as they scattered, but before they could run 2 meters, they were all frozen into ice sculptures. Then Juliet released fire magic, instantly turning all the mages to ashes. This terrifying battle power put immense pressure on Carnelian. I finally caught you, red-eyed seal. The moment he saw Sadday, Julian immediately asked what he had done to Lay. She wasn't much, but her screams were worth hearing. It sounds quite exciting. Carnelian suddenly stood in front of Julian. You don't look like you've won easily. You must have had a very difficult journey. Hearing this, Sayyid's face immediately darkened. He directly ordered the 2 seals to attack. Kill all the interfering people. In the critical moment, the village chief acted again. But even with his best defense, he could only protect Carnelian and Seo's group. The orcs and other villagers were mercilessly eliminated. This was unacceptable to Seo, so he rushed out of the protective shield, attacking toward Sayyid. However, Sayyid only used the simplest sword draw and directly defeated Seo. Just as he was about to finish Seo with one sword, Amarillis suddenly appeared, taking the blow for him. Seeing the fallen Amarillis, Julian and Carnelian were utterly shocked. Seo paid a terrible price for for his overconfidence, he completely broke down. But no matter how much he called out, Amarillis wouldn't wake up. His hysterical cries made Said even more excited. So this is all you're capable of. Meanwhile, Julian was also imperceptibly changing. At this moment, he was extremely angry and established a connection with Carnelian. At the same time, Carnelian's power was also enhanced. This is the first time I've truly felt my master's emotions. After saying this, Carnelian went to attack Syed. Finally, just as Syed was about to kill Sio, she repelled Syed in time. Carnelian pressed her advantage. Syed swung his sword, easily blocking, and mocked Carnelian for coming to die. Carnelian angrily stated, "Today I'm going to cut your damned sword and you into pieces." With each of Carnelian's attacks, Syed's sword actually began to crack. Carnelian seized the opportunity, striking Syed directly from the front. Syed also tried to kill Carnelian, but was quickly dodged by her. "You're not that powerful either." Syed couldn't understand why Carnelian, who should have weakened after fighting, was still so strong. Just then he noticed Julian in the distance. The current Julian was emitting a very special aura. Syed immediately understood, so it's because of him. So he immediately ordered the two seals, kill that tamer. Upon receiving the order, the two immediately released ice and fire magic towards Julian. Seeing the magic about to hit Julian, Carnelian was alarmed, but it was too late to save him. In the critical moment, the old village chief acted again, blocking the fatal strike. However, this sudden change interrupted the connection between Julian and Carnelian. Syed also took the opportunity to attack Carnelian. "Are you worried about your tamer? Where did your momentum go?" Carnelian directly launched an attack. However, after exchanging blows again, Carnelian clearly felt her power weaken. But Syed also knew that the longer it dragged on, the more disadvantageous it would be for him. So he unleashed all his power, soon suppressing Carnelian. Seeing her struggling, Syed couldn't help but get excited. "Your expression now is really good to see." But Carnelian suddenly smiled, because the two seals, Juliet and Justin, were now unable to use their power. Hearing this, Syed's face darkened. "Do you know what's the best thing about seals? That is, no matter what command the master gives, seals cannot refuse." Syed's words confused Carnelian. The next second, Syed suddenly laughed perversely, even if it means sacrificing their lives. Hearing this, Carnelian was shocked. "What are you going to do?" And on the other side, Juliet suddenly erupted, instantly suppressing the village chief. Then Justin suddenly appeared, grabbing the village chief's hands, not only interrupting his magic, but also using ice magic to freeze his hands. The village chief was shocked. He had already guessed that Justin was planning to perish together with him. Indeed, nearby Juliet had now completed the preparation for the killing magic, but he hesitated. After struggling for 2 seconds, he still launched the fatal strike, but it missed. The violent explosion blew the village chief and Justin away, and it was because of Juliet's moment of hesitation that gave the village chief a terrible suspicion. When Syed was about to issue orders again, he suddenly felt the connection between him and the seals weakening, with the possibility of losing control at any moment, so he immediately ordered, "They must kill him before the opponent recovers, even if it means draining all energy." The two were shocked when they received the order, but after hesitating briefly, they still raised their hands, performing the strongest combination technique, ice and fire dual heavens. At this time, one of the village chief's arms was already immobile. He seemed about to be engulfed by the magic attack, but the village chief was completely calm. The next second, magic light began to radiate from his body, and magical butterflies scattered. The village chief raised his only remaining arm. The butterflies flew towards Seal's attack, directly neutralizing the incoming magic, and the two who had exhausted their energy also fainted. Seeing this, Syed also stopped fighting, knowing he could no longer achieve his goal today. Just then, the village chief suddenly asked, "These two children, are they human?" That girl hesitated when attacking the boy. "This is a situation that wouldn't occur when seals receive orders from a skilled knight like you." "Haha, truly failed creations. I've dissected countless seals and found they're no different from humans. If there's no difference between humans and seals, then humans can certainly be modified into seals, right? Damn you, you actually pieced together two children into seals." Fortunately, with Carnelian and the village chief, it forced Syed to temporarily retreat. The village chief, who had been holding out all along, finally couldn't hold on anymore. But even with his serious injuries, he still told Carnelian not to worry about him, but to help the injured villagers. When everything was over, Julian hid on the mountaintop, recalling the brutality of this battle. He became more determined to become stronger. Just then, Carnelian suddenly appeared, asking him how he had achieved resonance with her, but Julian didn't know either. Seeing the dejected Julian, Carnelian quickly comforted him, although this was just a coincidence. "But when you wanted to kill Syed, you did resonate with me, and I instantly regained some power because of it, because tamers and seals can share feelings. If you could become a knight who perfectly controls resonance, then we could share the same emotions. That way I would become your eyes, your sword, and your heart." However, after saying this, Carnelian sadly flipped her hair, because she knew this was impossible to achieve. When Carnelian visited the village chief, she asked him how he would deal with these two abandoned children. The village chief happily indicated he wanted to adopt them. This shocked Carnelian, because although they looked cute, they could destroy the village without effort. But the village chief said everyone makes mistakes sometimes. He was very fortunate to have met a good mentor who guided him onto the right path. Now he also wanted to guide these two children onto the right path, and he had promised his late wife not to use magic again. This time, he only used it because he had no choice. It was also because of this promise that Co knew nothing about magic. Carnelian sighed disappointedly, because she had planned to invite the village chief to join them. After all, their team of 3 was simply hopeless in terms of combat power. Just then, the village chief asked Carnelian if she was being pursued by the emperor, but Carnelian proudly pointed upward. If you're referring to the emperor of Hespaspace, you're wrong. The person pursuing me has an even higher status. That person is the first emperor, Oben Baha. When the 3 prepared to leave, the village chief suddenly called them back because he guessed that all routes through the Olympic Mountains probably had ambushes, and suggested they go to Black West Mountain, where his mentor Thesius was, believing his mentor would certainly help them find a good solution. After saying this, he took out a necklace and gave it to Carnelian. With it, they could find Thesius, and Co would guide them. Looking at the energetic Co, Julian was very surprised. Are you really leaving the village? Co confirmed, saying he wanted to go out and see the broader world, then tell Amarillis everything he had seen and heard. Compared to the happy Julian, Carnelian sighed again helplessly, because another burden had been added to the team. After saying goodbye to the village chief, the 4 finally began their new journey. At this time, everyone had reached Black West Mountain, but they were lost. What made them more uneasy was, Melquint sensed that all life forms around had disappeared. The surroundings were deathly silent. Just then, Carnelian sensed a powerful presence approaching them. Everyone immediately became alert, but the next second, a girl suddenly crashed into Julian's arms, looking at the weak girl. Co was very jealous, then asked Carnelian, "Is this the powerful presence you mentioned?" Carnelian had to say she might have been mistaken. Suddenly, the girl shouted for them to run quickly. She was being hunted by the forest guardian, Marek. Carnelian very cautiously asked her why. The girl apologetically indicated she couldn't say. Co was very angry, blaming Carnelian for being unfriendly to a fragile lady, but before he could finish, Carnelian shouted for everyone to be careful she hadn't made a mistake. That powerful presence was approaching. The next second, a giant hand appeared in the sky. Then Sentinel Marek appeared before everyone. However, in Carnelian's eyes, the so-called Sentinel was just an evil spirit, so Carnelian asked him why he was hunting the girl. Marek indicated that trespassing and relieving pressure anywhere were punishable offenses. And I'm not an evil spirit. About being called an evil spirit, Marek was very angry. Carnelian suddenly pointed at Melquint. This one is also often misunderstood, so you can exchange experiences with him. Hearing this, Marek was very puzzled. What could be misunderstood about a beautiful fairy? Melquint very shyly said, "Actually, I'm male." Marek, who had been somewhat attracted, instantly felt the world had lost its light. Carnelian said impatiently, "See, besides you, there are many other poor souls who are misunderstood, so stop being a nuisance, you evil spirit." Being called an evil spirit again, Marek couldn't stand it anymore, swinging his weapon at Carnelian. "I told you not to call me an evil spirit again." Just then, the necklace from the village chief emitted a dazzling light. Marek also recognized this as an item belonging to Lord Thesius. Hearing Marek mention Theseus's name, Carnelian immediately said they were here to find him, and asked Marek to put away his weapon and take them to Thesius. But although Marek stopped attacking, he planned to leave directly. After all, he had no obligation to guide Carnelian. After saying this, he disappeared on the spot. That stinky evil spirit. Next time I meet him, he's dead. The girl beside them looked utterly disbelieving. "You actually persuaded Marek." Carnelian indicated it was thanks to the necklace, which saved them from a troublesome battle. Theseus was truly no ordinary person, and the girl indicated they were also extraordinary. After expressing her gratitude to everyone, the girl was about to leave, because the children were waiting for her. Hearing about children, Co instantly became confused. He didn't understand why the beautiful lady was especially close to Julian, and actually had a child. But the next second, he called for everyone to chase after the girl, because it sounded like she knew Thesius. Following her would certainly lead to the village. Indeed, 2.5 hours later, everyone made an amazing discovery. Deep in the forest, there was actually a very large city hidden, and this was Theseus City. Carnelian was puzzled by the sudden appearance of this town. Julian said that once they found Thesius, everything would be explained. From the locals, they learned that to meet Theseus, they needed to go to the Tower of Theseus. So they entered the Tower of Theseus and headed toward the bottom. Carnelian still thought this place was way too strange. Soon, Melquint discovered an old man lying at the bottom of the tower. Who would have thought he not only lived at the bottom, but could sleep so soundly? Even though Julian and the others had already gathered around and were observing him, he still didn't wake up. Everyone decided to wait here for him to wake up. Carnelian couldn't take it it anymore and directly flipped the bed away. The sleeping old man flew out along with the bed. After doing this, Carnelian said she'd really tired herself out. But surprisingly, the old man was still sleeping. SEO wondered if he was a seal, but Carnelian said no seal would sleep here. Julian pointed out that Carnelian had slept in a whale's belly before. So what? Is that supposed to be my fault? Carnelian shouted. Apparently woken by the noise, the old man finally opened his eyes. SEO mistook him for a seal and grabbed his hand. Hello, I'm SEO, your master. Unexpectedly, the old man suddenly lashed out and hit him. Turns out he was Thesius, not some so-called seal. SEO breathed a sigh of relief. After all, he didn't really want to command an old man in battle. Julian explained to Thesius that Rhett had sent them. However, Thesius couldn't remember who Rhett was at all. Carnelian told this old man to think carefully, but Thesius said he didn't want to be called grandpa by someone over 1,000 years old. Carnelian hated it most when people mentioned her age. She was clearly still in the bloom of youth. Thesius explained that his disciples were spread all over the world, so he couldn't remember who Rhett was. Julian wanted to ask Thesius about the way to Derkart. Thesius directly told them to just take the main road. But the main road had long been blocked by Oben Barha. Surprisingly, Thesius already knew that Julian and the others were wanted. He said all Carnelian had to do was claim she was a red-eyed human, not a seal. But who the hell would believe that? Theseus already knew Julian and the others would come, so he had them stay here for a few days. However, Carnelian wasn't about to believe this lying old man. But Julian called out to Theseus. He wanted to become Theseus's disciple. Carnelian didn't expect his reason for doing this was to become stronger, because he didn't want to be the one being protected anymore. However, Theseus told him he had no magical talent, but Julian wasn't giving up. He wanted a way to become instantly stronger. He was willing to pay any price, even if the hope was slim. He didn't want to just stand behind Carnelian and watch her fight anymore. Perhaps moved by Julian's sincerity, Theseus decided to give him a chance, though it might cost him his life. Julian accepted the proposal. He knew this might be his only chance, but Carnelian didn't want to watch Julian take such a risk for her sake. Seeing she couldn't stop Julian, there was nothing Carnelian could do, no matter how unwilling she was. After leaving the Tower of Theseus, Carnelian was still fuming. She insisted Theseus was a fraud, and Julian was just too naive. Just as they were about to leave, they heard from passers-by that a knight had been injured. Carnelian pushed through the crowd directly. After all, she already thought this place was suspicious. Unexpectedly, what met her eyes was an old acquaintance, Hessen. The seriously injured knight the locals mentioned was Hessen's current master. Turns out they had been attacked by evil spirits in the forest. Suddenly, Carnelian noticed a familiar knight's badge on Hessen's master, which meant they had come to hunt down Carnelian. Hessen also realized this and quickly explained he had come hunting, but was attacked, so he got lost. Carnelian wasn't about to believe him and directly drew her sword. Just as Carnelian was about to strike down the human before her, a familiar figure entered her vision. It was the girl Alice they'd met in the forest. Turns out she was the healer here. Under her care, Hessen's master had escaped mortal danger, and her children were all orphans she had taken in. The innocent children always brought adults a sense of comfort. Even Carnelian let down her guard and played with them. Even seals who didn't need to eat felt the desire to eat for the first time. As night gradually deepened, the laughter in the manor gradually ceased. Carnelian's expression while resting became relaxed too. Watching the sleeping Carnelian, Julian thought maybe she'd always longed for this kind of peaceful life. Seeing Julian still hadn't fallen asleep, Alice quietly came to the door. Since worries were keeping him from sleeping, why not try a cup of tea? The two came to the balcony to brew tea. The moonlight was very bright, illuminating them as they enjoyed their tea. From when Carnelian became his master until now, Julian actually never wanted to believe it. After all the hardships and wandering, now that he finally saw hope, he still felt uneasy. Alice was glad she wasn't the only lost soul in the world. Although the townspeople disappeared every night, Alice firmly believed they would return. This was the belief that kept her going. Julian, I know you may face many difficulties, but please believe in yourself. The dawn of the next day quickly arrived after the peaceful night. Julian found Carnelian and said he wanted to become stronger. Learning Julian still wanted to find Theseus, Carnelian immediately refused. She said pridefully that she'd rather wander the streets than go to the Tower of Theseus. Then she left without looking back. As soon as Julian arrived at the tower, he saw Theseus carving words on a stone tablet. SEO thought this was a tool to stabilize the tower, but it turned out to be just decoration. Julian said he was ready. He just wanted to become stronger. Just when he thought it would start soon, Theseus began rummaging around. After searching for quite a while, Theseus finally found a sword. Julian received the sword, and out of curiosity wanted to draw it to take a look. Unexpectedly, as soon as he drew it, he suffered a severe electric shock. Fortunately, Theseus quickly stopped Julian. "You bastard, are you trying to die?" Theseus couldn't help but curse. Turns out this sword's power was extremely strong, but its only side effect was, it would drain the user's life force. This sword was named Infertile, and could be considered a sword possessed by a demon. If you want instant strength, then when you want to protect someone truly important, you'll draw the sword without hesitation, not hesitate like now. If you're you're afraid, give it back to me. Unexpectedly, Julian directly inserted the sword at his waist. He didn't want to run away anymore. Having gained great power meant paying the corresponding price. Infertile was exactly that kind of sword. Carnelian was still huffing. Her master was weak enough but also stupid. She walked along the river. Looking at this river, she suddenly decided to see where the source of this river was. Carnelian followed the river with swift steps. She was amazed to discover the end was actually a magic circle, and quickly drew her sword to block Merrick's attack. Why was Merrick here? Just as the battle between Carnelian and Merrick was about to intensify, Thesius stopped them. "Old man, what are you doing here?" Carnelian was confused. She clearly remembered her master went to find him, but how was he here now? Thesius knew what she meant, and explained that Julian might be talking with him, or perhaps he was taking the test. Carnelian's eyes widened in disbelief. Thesius didn't understand why Carnelian reacted so strongly to hearing about a test. "Shut up!" Carnelian instantly vanished from where she stood. In the blink of an eye, she split Theseus's figure in two. "I shouldn't be the target of your anger, should I?" Surprisingly, Theseus wasn't dead. "Isn't your enemy yourself?" Hearing this, Carnelian's anger flared even more. She swung her sword again to cut down the figure, but Theseus still appeared behind her. "Carnelian is just a name others gave you. It has no meaning. Who are you?" "Just a girl with red eyes." Meanwhile, on the other side, SEO was begging Theseus to give him a weapon. Surprisingly, Theseus actually continued rummaging around. Then he tossed SEO a long, thin sword. SEO excitedly gripped the sword. "This must be an incredible sword." Theseus said it was just a relatively sharp sword. If used well, it could smoothly cut through some things. "That's it?" SEO felt disappointed. There was no magical power at all. "You bastard, if you don't want it, give it back." Theseus got angry. The knight at Alice's house also woke up. Hessen quickly explained the situation to his master. Suddenly, Hessen sensed something and quickly stood up. Sure enough, Carnelian pushed the door open at that moment. Carnelian said there was nothing interesting in town, so she came here to check, but Knight Cayman was shocked to discover that Carnelian's eyes were red. He was so shocked he sat up straight, because he noticed Hessen had already entered alert mode. "Could you be that red-eyed seal? You're calling a frail little girl like me a seal? How scary." Hessen had never seen this kind of scene and didn't know what to do for a moment. Cayman quickly stepped forward to apologize. After all, he had been presumptuous first. "Really? Then please don't treat me as a seal anymore." She didn't expect anyone would be dumb enough to believe this. "I apologize again, I'm Cayman." Cayman actually believed it and apologized. Hessen finally snapped out of it and quickly explained that Cayman escaped danger thanks to her help. Looking at Cayman like this, Carnelian couldn't help but think of Julian. Carnelian suddenly heard some strange sounds. "My master, no, I mean, my beloved should be back." She turned and left directly. Cayman couldn't take his eyes off her. He'd never seen anyone so beautiful. Hessen was speechless. If Cayman knew Carnelian's true identity. The scene shifted to Syed's manor, where the sunset scenery was quite beautiful. Syed's body, depleted of magic and seriously injured, had been treated. "Are you happy to see me like this?" Syed questioned the woman before him. She was Syed's brother's wife and she didn't respond. "I suppose you'll never treat me kindly, because my late brother feared me becoming stronger. As my brother, he challenged me to a duel to the death. Isn't that laughable? You're always so boring. I think the last time you showed emotion was when I dug out his heart with my sword. My miserable state and your miserable existence are both laughable." Just as Evdian was about to go out to get something for Syed, she opened the door. She bowed to the blue-haired man at the door before leaving. He was Leopold von Massek. He'd heard Syed was seriously injured and came to visit. Everyone in the Empire hoped Syed would die so Leopold could replace him. But not everyone was as despicable as Syed. The scene returned. Carnelian came downstairs and saw the returning Julian and SEO. "Darling, you're finally back." Carnelian happily walked toward Julian. However, both Julian and SEO thought something was wrong with Carnelian's brain. Carnelian leaned close to Julian's ear and told him they should now address each other as lovers. Then she glared viciously at SEO behind Julian. If they dared not cooperate, they'd be dead. Carnelian's darling made Julian feel like he was floating, but SEO didn't dare stay even 1 second longer and ran out directly. Carnelian looked at the sword on Julian's body. She knew what it was, but she still pretended not to know, and asked Julian what it was. After learning it was given by Thesius, Carnelian threatened Julian to sit down and talk. After Julian sat down, Carnelian exploded. "Why did you accept this sword? What hero are you trying to be?" Carnelian was furious. "You want to die for me? I don't want to hear such bullshit reasons." Carnelian's powerful aura prevented Julian from speaking. Julian couldn't hold back anymore. He slammed the table and stood up, stunning Carnelian for a moment. "I'm so weak, unworthy of being your master, but I don't want to be a burden either. You don't need to do this. You just need to become a little stronger so I can change masters." Julian was silent for a long time. Finally, he still staggered toward Carnelian. "I don't want you to change masters now. At first I thought that way, but that was too selfish. Now I just don't want to be your burden anymore to limit your strength. I promise I'll become stronger, Carnelian. I promise. I just want to stay by your side as long as possible, so please trust me, okay? Even while saying the toughest words, Julian still leaned on Carnelian's shoulder. Carnelian hugged the fool before her. She'd long given up hope for these things. Hearing the argument downstairs, Cayman came down the stairs wanting to mediate, but then he discovered the two were embracing tightly. Noticing Cayman's arrival, Carnelian pushed Julian away, but she forgot her strength wasn't something the current Julian could handle. After realizing it, Carnelian immediately ran to help Julian up. Julian was just about to say being this master was really frustrating, when his abdomen was struck hard, forcibly interrupting his speech. Carnelian shyly said to only call her master when they were alone. Hearing all this, Cayman was shocked by this pair's unique preferences. Julian was about to explain the truth, but seeing Carnelian's look, he didn't dare. After easing the awkwardness, the two walked out of the room. Then they saw SEO lying on the ground talking to himself. SEO was missing Amarillis, but the Amarillis he was thinking of suddenly turned into Julian and Carnelian. SEO immediately screamed and bolted far away, like a child caught doing something bad. At this moment, Alice also came back with the children. She brought not only the children but also news of Merrick's arrival. By then, this city and the children would disappear, and she didn't want to survive alone. Julian wanted to persuade Alice to leave, but she'd already made up her mind to live and die with the city. Julian couldn't listen to this at all. He didn't want to watch Alice throw her life away. Alice said this place had given her the happiest time of her life, and she didn't want to leave. Julian knew that no matter how much he tried to persuade her, it would be useless. He angrily pushed the door open, but the scene outside made him unable to believe his eyes. Where was the city? Before him were only dead trees and the solitary house. Soon, Julian spotted Merrick hovering high in the sky. He immediately prepared to draw his sword and fight, even at the cost of his life. However, Merrick was certain Julian wouldn't dare draw the sword. Julian could no longer endure it, and was about to draw infertile, but was stopped by a slender hand. The hand's owner was Alice, signaling Julian not to draw the sword. But how could Julian just watch Alice go to her death? He didn't expect even Carnelian to tell him not to draw the sword, because everything here, including Alice, was an illusion created by Thesius. Alice wasn't afraid of disappearing, but she wanted to leave memories in Julian and the others' minds. The children also said goodbye to Carnelian and the others one by one. The children seemed to know what was about to happen too. They nestled beside Alice, waving goodbye. Cayman said the debt of saving his life would never be forgotten. Carnelian and SEO both pretended to be cheerful as they said goodbye. Alice closed the door with relief. Under Merrick's spell, the house just now turned into a giant burnt tree. Julian still couldn't believe that living people had just vanished like that. Thesius arrived with Melquint. Thesius said there was no need to be so sad. This city was originally just a dead forest. He was only halfway through when Carnelian pushed him aside, and she and SEO grabbed Melquint, asking where he'd been. Thesius coughed a few times to prove he was still there. He continued explaining that the city came from the memories of this burnt forest, and Alice was the largest tree. During her time living as a human, she must have been troubled and confused. Julian didn't understand why Thesius created it, only to let it disappear. Thesius didn't answer, but instead asked Julian why he wanted to stop Merrick. Everyone acts according to their beliefs, even without results. Julian remembered what Alice had told him that night. The road is long and difficult, but if you walk it, you'll arrive, Julian. Theseus continued. It's not that nothing happened. At least you all still remember Alice. After saying that, he prepared to slip away. Before leaving, he cast a spell on Carnelian. Her crimson pupils turned crystal blue. Theseus explained that as long as Carnelian didn't fly into a rage, her eyes wouldn't turn red again. On the surface, Carnelian smiled and said she wasn't someone who got angry easily, but inside she cursed that the damn old man definitely did it on purpose. Then Theseus vanished from where he stood, leaving only his blessing for them. Cayman walked toward Carnelian, saying now she didn't need to worry about being mistaken for a red-eyed seal. Hessen reminded Cayman at this moment that it was time for them to leave. I look forward to the day we meet again. After saying this, Cayman left with Hessen. Carnelian took the opportunity to put her arm around Julian's shoulders, saying she looked forward to seeing them again. Only then did Julian remember to ask what Melquint had gone to see Theseus about. Melquint said he would follow Theseus to train and would part ways with Julian and the others. At first, Theseus didn't agree, but Merrick changed his mind. Carnelian was curious that an evil spirit would do such a thing, but Merrick hated the title of evil spirit. But Seo felt something seemed off, because Merrick was actually blushing toward Melquint. Melquint said they didn't mind issues of gender or race. All three were shocked upon hearing this. Thus, the party of four became a party of three. Melquint said when he finished his training, he would definitely find Julian and the others to repay the favor. Julian looked back at the city where they'd stayed not long ago. Even though it had turned back into dead trees, his memories would last forever. Their next destination was the Temple City, Holy City, also the headquarters of the Orthodox Church. They would pretend to be pilgrims while actually heading to Derkart. Soon they arrived at a hilltop near the Holy City. However, this city didn't seem to be as they imagined. Attics were everywhere, and there were street girls too. This place not only didn't look sacred but seemed quite evil, but they were just going to Derkart. The city was just a stop along the way. However, the dock had been blocked by border guards. From a local old captain, they learned all routes to Derkart had been blocked. These people are so bored they came here looking for some red-eyed seal. How ridiculous, the old captain complained. Hearing red-eyed seal, Carnelian's whole body trembled. At this moment, Ezio had a bright idea. Why don't we just stay here? Is this the time to rest? Carnelian roared. Sleep when facing difficulties, that's the orc's best method. Though unwilling, this was the best option for now. At this time in a mine, two burly men were chasing a thief. The person they were chasing was a silver-haired girl who'd stolen an apple. She ran near Julian, who was waiting for Carnelian and was about to crash into him. With a bang, both fell to the ground. The girl gritted her teeth and got up. Just as she was about to pick up the apple and escape, she found her pursuers had arrived. Before she could run, she was kicked in the abdomen. The severely injured girl couldn't continue running due to the pain. Just as Julian was about to step forward to stop them, a sharp dagger appeared from behind, pressing against Julian's neck. Just as they were about to attack Julian and the others, someone stood on the roof. He leapt down from the roof, dagger in hand, attacking the man who wanted to hurt the girl. He angrily thrust the dagger into the man's throat, killing him instantly. This man who struck ruthlessly was the girl's brother, Torbin, a member of the Assassin's Guild. He didn't pause after instantly killing one person, but immediately threw a dagger backward. The swift and accurate dagger instantly hit the person behind Julian. Torbin looked at his sister kneeling on the ground picking up scattered apples. Sharon, I told you not to do dangerous things. Brother, do you mean I should watch those children starve to death? Torbin sighed helplessly. He understood his sister, but he just worried about her. But soon he drew a new dagger and pointed it at Julian. Because Julian had witnessed Sharon's theft, Torbin wanted to silence him. Seeing Torbin getting closer, Julian got into position, nervously gripping Infertile. A dazzling sword light from Carnelian descended from above, striking in front of Torbin and blocking him. After all, Torbin was a member of the Assassin's Guild and didn't give up the attack because of Carnelian's blocking. Though Carnelian wielded a great sword, she wasn't clumsy. She lifted the sword to block the flying dagger. In the gap while she was blocking, Torbin leaped up and got behind Carnelian. After all, Carnelian was battle-hardened. She swung her sword behind her without even looking back, but Torbin nimbly dodged everything. Torbin was amazed that Carnelian could easily control the giant sword without being sluggish. The battle stopped, and Carnelian checked if Julian was hurt. Hearing Carnelian call Julian master, Torbin asked in confusion if she was a slave. As soon as he finished speaking, he felt immense killing intent. Sure enough, Torbin barely dodged on instinct when that exaggerated giant sword stabbed into where his head had just been. That wasn't all. Carnelian's clenched fist had already rushed to Torbin's face. Then Torbin was hit in the abdomen by this fist carrying tremendous force, and his body flew up. Being hit by this heavy punch, the intense pain caused Torbin to lose consciousness instantly. Don't jump to conclusions. I'm not a slave. Carnelian pulled out her giant sword and said, I'm a seal. She swung the giant sword, about to bring it down to end Torbin's life. Julian immediately rushed in front of Carnelian to stop her from killing Torbin. Carnelian looked displeased. If she hadn't pulled back in time, Julian would be a dead man now. Carnelian! He's just trying to protect his sister. Julian turned and extended his hand to Torbin, but Torbin didn't appreciate it and stood up on his own. Carnelian reported the situation to Julian. All routes had been blocked. They had nowhere to go. Torbin, who'd been eavesdropping, spoke up at this moment. You want to cross the border? He said he knew a method, but it carried great risk. Carnelian threatened him that he'd better be telling the truth. Torbin explained they just needed to disguise themselves as slaves in the local slave trade, and slave trading was illegal. Carnelian understood. Since it was illegal trade, that meant there was a secret passage. Torbin said he could introduce an acquaintance, but Carnelian didn't trust him. But Torbin quickly made it clear. He really hoped Julian would leave this place. After all, with Carnelian being so powerful, he didn't want his sister to provoke her. But Sharon had long since picked up the apples and left. Apparently, the siblings didn't get along. At the inn, Ezio was curious why Julian and the others had been gone so long. You two must have gone on a date, right? Ezio looked firmly at the two before him. Both Julian's and Carnelian's faces couldn't help but turn red. Just as Ezio was about to celebrate his guess, the giant sword was already stuck in the wall next to his head. If you dare talk nonsense again, I'll sell you as a slave, Carnelian said through gritted teeth. At this time, Sharon had already brought the apples to the convent. The director happily hugged the apples. The children had been hungry for a long time. After leaving, Sharon didn't notice Torbin protecting her from the shadows. The next day at the dock, crew members bustled about. The captain was arranging the crew to work. The big guy and the thin man were assigned to go below deck to check if the cargo was secured. They came below deck, which was filled with bound slaves. They were chatting when suddenly their attention was drawn to a young girl nearby. It was Sharon, who delivered apples to the convent yesterday. She tried to struggle, but it was useless. The thin man grabbed Sharon's face, bragging to the big guy that she'd fetch a good price. But this wasn't the best yet. He pointed behind a pillar, where there was an even better one. The thin man said this was the best merchandise he'd seen all year. When the big guy saw clearly, his face flushed in disbelief. And the premium merchandise they spoke of was Carnelian. The big guy saw the captain was about to rest. He showed an evil smile as he walked toward the lower deck. He was completely captivated by Carnelian's beauty. Ignoring the thin man's attempts to stop him, the big guy approached Carnelian with a lecherous grin. He couldn't wait to get his hands on her. At that moment, Carnelian broke free from her restraints. A fist containing enormous strength smashed into the big guy's head. Seeing the big guy lying on the ground, the thin man wanted to shout, but Carnelian wouldn't give him that chance. Another punch swung out. After dealing with these two minions, Carnelian immediately found Julian and untied him. When they found SEO, he'd passed out from seasickness. Carnelian noticed another familiar face in the ship's hold. It was Sharon. Julian didn't understand why she was here too. Surprisingly, Sharon was very angry. She wasn't going to Derkart, nor was she captured. She'd actually been forcibly brought aboard by Torbin. Sharon said she needed to return to the Holy City to save those children. Carnelian said she'd give the ship to Sharon so she could sail back herself, because she was going to hijack this ship. Meanwhile, at the Maritime Hall in the Holy City, Crowley demanded that Archibald not interfere with the Holy City's business. Archibald wasn't about to compromise. He came here precisely to completely blockade the Holy City. Deputy Chief Crowley, if you think you can beat me, you're welcome to try. The captain was awakened from his sleep, angrily preparing to check who did it. He turned to find a woman with a sweet smile and her powerful fist approaching him. After being forced into a friendly exchange, the captain was beaten to a pulp. He willingly offered his services to Carnelian. From the captain, they learned it would be a long time before reaching Derkart. Carnelian was very unhappy. "Captain, there are massive rocks ahead," came the sailor's voice from the lookout. In the captain's memory, there were no reefs in these waters. Carnelian immediately gripped her sword hilt, ready for battle, because surrounding the ship weren't rocks but a fleet. The fleet commander had flowing white hair and held a megaphone. "Listen up, ship ahead. Immediately lay down your weapons and surrender, or you'll be our enemy." Hearing the voice, Carnelian couldn't believe it. She'd just seen the owner of this voice recently. Julian heard the commotion and also ran up to the deck to ask what was happening. But hearing the voice, he froze too, because the voice belonged to Knight Cayman. Julian didn't expect his reunion with Knight Cayman would be here. Cayman looked at Julian on the deck below and froze. Carnelian reassured herself. They were just slaves now, no need to be nervous. So she called over the captain. "You know we're slaves, right? You know what to do next if you want to live, right?" After the fleet approached, Cayman and Hessen jumped onto the deck. Cayman didn't understand why Carnelian was here, but he still demanded they lay down their weapons. Unexpectedly, the next second Carnelian dropped her giant sword and ran toward Cayman. This action even stunned Julian. She threw herself into Cayman's arms. Cayman didn't know what to do for a moment. "Sir Cayman, I'm so scared I thought I'd become a slave." Carnelian's coquettish voice made Cayman blush. She didn't forget to look back and threaten the captain with her eyes. The captain had no choice but to robotically say she should go back below deck. Watching Carnelian's exaggerated performance, Hessen really couldn't bear to watch. Even if Cayman didn't believe she was a seal, he should at least notice that exaggerated giant sword. "Silence! You're going to sell her as a slave and dare threaten her in front of me?" Cayman shouted at the captain. "Don't worry, with me here, no one can hurt you." Cayman took Carnelian's hand and gently comforted her. Cayman's IQ seemed indeed somewhat remarkable. Hessen had never noticed before. Riding on Cayman's fleet, Carnelian and the others returned to the Holy City. "Thank you, Sir Cayman. We safely returned to the Holy City." Carnelian happily thanked Cayman, but secretly she cursed about being back at the starting point. Cayman magnanimously said to come find him any time if needed. Hessen found a suspicious bag of powder, attracting Cayman's attention. Then they took their leave with the excuse of investigating the powder. Now the slave trade route wouldn't work, and they were out of money with nowhere to go. At this time, Sharon said she could solve this difficulty for them, but her furious expression seemed to foretell that something big was about to happen. "Come with me!" But Sharon's expression doesn't match the lightness of her tone. Inside the cathedral, the director is being grabbed by a muscular man with apples scattered across the floor. The man demands to know where the apples came from, but the director refuses to betray Sharon. Silence only brings more brutal violence as the director is slammed against the wall. Just as the man is about to go further, a nun in the cathedral can't bear to see the director harmed any longer and speaks up. But a flying dagger is her only reply. Seeing that interrogating, the director is getting nowhere, the man shifts his target to the nun. Outside the cathedral, Torbin is polishing his dagger. As a member of the Assassin's Guild, the sound of footsteps outside puts him on alert. He quickly grabs his dagger and crouches by the door, his instincts telling him trouble is coming. The footsteps draw closer, and Torbin's grip on the dagger tightens. The moment the footsteps reach the door, Torbin uses gravity to his advantage, bringing the dagger down from above. But when he realizes it's Sharon, the dagger stops steadily right in front of her, leaving her unharmed. "Wasn't selling me into slavery enough? Now you want to kill me too?" Facing the dagger, Sharon questions him angrily. As Torbin wonders why Sharon has returned, Julian and his two companions enter the room. "What gives you the right to send me away without asking?" Sharon's anger hasn't subsided. Torbin explains he had no choice, as the organization is conducting a citywide search for whoever stole the apples. Once Sharon is found, her life will be in danger. The three of them are curious about what Sharon could have stolen to face such dire consequences. Torbin explains that Sharon stole poisoned apples, the source of all drugs in the Holy City. These apples are the raw materials for making drugs, and they're the root cause of why this Holy City has become what it is today. Sharon is stunned by this revelation because she gave those apples to the children at the cathedral. She recalls how happily she handed those apples to the cathedral's director. She stares at her hands in regret, overwhelmed by endless despair. Torbin tries to comfort Sharon, knowing how much pain his sister must be in, but Sharon slaps his hand away. "You knew I would bring food to the children, why didn't you tell me?" Sharon says through gritted teeth. "I'm not like you. turning a blind eye to everything. Sharon angrily turns away. Even if you're not blind, you still choose to turn a blind eye to everything, Torbin. Torbin presses his lips together. He has his own struggles too. Julian steps forward to ask Torbin if he's all right. As he looks unwell, Torbin clenches his fist, then reveals he knows a secret passage, but he demands that Julian's group take Sharon with them. How dare you bargain with me? Carnelian has no intention of doing as he says. Torbin, we agree to your terms, but if Sharon doesn't want to come, there's nothing we can do. Julian stops the angry Carnelian. Torbin lowers his brow, knowing what kind of person his sister is. Having left Torbin's place, Sharon is now running frantically through the holy city streets. She arrives at the cathedral out of breath, urgently asking how the director and children are. She doesn't dare lift her head, tears filling her eyes, her whole body trembling, afraid to see the children's condition. So you're the one who stole the apples. A cold voice enters Sharon's ears from behind. A bag is then pulled over Sharon's head, and she loses consciousness. The scene shifts to the entrance of the Assassin's Guild, where Torbin is slowly walking toward the gate. However, he's stopped by the guards at the door, as the guildmaster has forbidden anyone from disturbing him. But the guildmaster's voice from inside tells Torbin to enter, so the guards have no choice but to let him through. Torbin has barely stepped inside when he sees something that fills him with rage. Before him is the guildmaster limbering up in Sharon, who has clearly been tortured. The wounds and bloodstains on the unconscious Sharon's body tell the story of what she just endured. Even though Torbin is extremely angry at this moment, his face shows no expression whatsoever, as if he doesn't know the girl before him. Seeing Torbin arrive, the guildmaster explains that the girl on the ground is the one who stole the organization's apples. The guildmaster steps on Sharon, ordering Torbin to throw her into the forest to feed the beasts. After receiving the order, Torbin hoists Sharon onto his shoulder and heads out, maintaining his calm expression throughout. The guildmaster watches Torbin leave with piercing eyes, pulling out a cigar and saying nothing more. Torbin carries Sharon slowly through the guild's territory. The closer he gets to the exit, the faster his pace becomes. Then he breaks into a run. His worst fear has come true. He can no longer maintain his expression, biting his teeth in anguish to keep from making a sound. That bastard actually dared to hurt Sharon like this. Torbin's inner fury is overwhelming. He rushes toward the cathedral with Sharon. She needs medical treatment for her severe injuries. Torbin pounds on the door urgently. Any more delay and Sharon's life will be in danger. The door opens, but it's not the director who answers. The person before him was sent by the guildmaster to wait for the traitor. The assassin doesn't give Torbin time to hesitate, immediately drawing a dagger to strike at Torbin. But Torbin isn't an ordinary assassin. He instantly ducks to avoid the dagger aimed at his shoulder. While dodging, he draws the dagger ready at his waist and drives it into the assassin's side. The opponent's reckless fighting style makes it too easy for him to find openings. The intense pain in his abdomen makes the assassin cry out and double over. Torbin won't give him a moment to catch his breath, pulling out the dagger to strike at the assassin's head. After taking care of the assassin, Torbin places Sharon on a bed inside. Seeing Sharon wake up, Torbin doesn't have time to explain and runs out to find a doctor, but he barely reaches the door when he hears the guildmaster's voice. His worst fear has come to pass. The street outside is already filled with people the guildmaster brought. "We took you in, and this is how you repay us with betrayal," the guildmaster roars. When Torbin was young, his father sold him to the guild just to survive. The guildmaster took him in and decided to train him as an assassin. Young Torbin and a group of children were surrounded by armed men. Only those who survive earn the right to assassin training. Torbin was the only child to survive and become an assassin. Sharon sits up trembling. Even though she hates Torbin, she still sees him as her brother. She wants to tell Torbin to run, but how could Torbin listen to her? Torbin closes the door, deciding to face the Assassin's Guild alone. Now that he's been exposed, there's no need to keep up the act. All blades are drawn. This time Torbin will fight with everything he has. For Sharon, Torbin's incredible speed and precise strikes immediately take down several people. Despite being vastly outnumbered, Torbin shows no fear, cutting down his former colleagues with swift strokes. Hearing the sounds of battle outside, Sharon knows Torbin is in danger because of her, and she can only hope he survives. Torbin viciously raises his dagger, taking down this group of assassins single-handedly. The guildmaster watches with a smile as Torbin kills these assassins, but he shows no fear, because everyone in the guild is heading here. No matter how fierce Torbin is, he can't win a war of attrition. However, one of his subordinates calls out from behind, shouting that everyone at headquarters has been killed by a woman. The guildmaster can't believe his ears. How is that possible? All those elite assassins at headquarters wiped out. Are you talking about me? I finally found you all. A clear voice reaches everyone's ears. Why were you all out during work hours? You made me search for so long. The voice belongs to Carnelian. Is this woman insane? The guildmaster roars, completely unaware of the figure that has appeared behind him. Carnelian holds her greatsword, pulling back like a bow to strike at the guildmaster. The sound of flesh meeting steel rings out. The guildmaster turns in shock to see his subordinate already separated from his head. Carnelian's greatsword is already pressed against his chest. Who the hell are you? The guildmaster can't believe someone could be this powerful. Me? I'm just a passerby who wants to get something something from you. Then, Torbin follows Julian's group into the Assassin's Guild. The place is littered with severed limbs. It seems the assassin headquarters really was completely slaughtered. The guildmaster walking at the front can't believe what he's seeing. Carnelian, thank you. If you hadn't come to save me, Torbin looks at Carnelian. But Carnelian says there's no need to thank her. She only came back because she didn't trust Torbin. Hearing this, Torbin lowers his brow and says nothing more. The door to the guildmaster's chamber is violently torn open. The door guard couldn't be more dead. SEO stands with his sword, bored, watching the guildmaster frantically search around as he really has nothing else to do. I found it. The guildmaster excitedly rushes toward Carnelian. This is the map you're looking for, madam. He presents a bundled set of blueprints with both hands. Madam, I gave you the map as you requested. According to our agreement, you'll spare me. The guildmaster doesn't dare raise his head. Carnelian snatches the map away, stating she's decided to spare him, but Torbin might not. The guildmaster barely raises his head to see Torbin approaching with a dagger, hatred written all over his face. Torbin, have you forgotten how I raised you? Without me, there would be no you today. The guildmaster tries to persuade Torbin. Thinking of Sharon's terrible condition, enraged Torbin drives his dagger straight through the guildmaster's body. Recalling all the past events, all the atrocities inflicted on him, Torbin finally slays the guildmaster, showing a smile that's been suppressed for so long. That's where the secret passage entrance is. He points to a wall in the guildmaster's chamber that's a different color from the rest. Carnelian walks toward the wall skeptically. She pushes against the wall with both hands. The sound of moving bricks reaches everyone's ears, so Carnelian clenches her fist and gathers her strength, apparently planning to blast through the stone door with one punch. Boom! A massive sound and shockwaves sweep through the entire room. Julian shouts Carnelian's name because the commotion is simply too loud. Don't worry, I didn't use my full strength. Carnelian smiles at Julian, completely unaware there's someone behind the wall. When she turns around, she suddenly discovers Cayman walking out from inside the wall. Lady Carnelian, what a surprise to see you again. Cayman greets Carnelian with a smile. Carnelian hasn't reacted yet. She doesn't understand why Cayman is here. Mr. Cayman, you've come to save me again. Carnelian, instantly getting into character, throws herself into Cayman's arms, acting coy. Julian, watching this scene, is simply speechless. Carnelian claims her group was kidnapped again, and it's great that Cayman came. But they all seem to be dead? Cayman looks at the carnage on the ground. Carnelian just remembers she killed all these people. It was Mr. Torbin who killed them all. Otherwise, we wouldn't have survived until now. She directly points at the bewildered Torbin. Mr. Torbin is really strong. He killed all these people by himself. Carnelian continues to embellish. Such a clumsy lie. There's no way that man killed everyone by himself. Hessen is speechless. He knows Carnelian well. These people were clearly killed by a great sword. A dagger couldn't do this. Most importantly, she smashed through the stone wall in front of everyone. Surely Cayman won't believe her this time. How terrifying, Lady Carnelian. Thank goodness you weren't hurt. Cayman grips Carnelian's shoulders. Hessen is speechless. He actually believes this. During the conversation, Carnelian learns that Cayman discovered what appeared to be a secret passage outside, so he brought troops in. Suddenly, a massive explosion and tremor nearly causes the room to collapse. Cayman assures them it's fine. His people just blew up the other side of the passage. It won't affect here. Carnelian looks worried on the surface, but internally she's already cursed Cayman 100 times. Cayman then arranges for his subordinates to thoroughly search this place, preferably finding clues related to the drugs. Wait! A sharp voice enters Cayman's ears from the doorway. The newcomer is Crowley and his subordinates, who gave the border army permission to search this city. Crowley approaches Cayman. The border army should just guard the border. What do you take the special forces for? Crowley gets even closer to Cayman. Crowley states he's taking over here and tells Cayman to leave with the border troops. Cayman clenches his fist. He doesn't seem willing to back down. I'm very sorry, but I don't plan to leave today. Cayman blocks Crowley's advance. You dare ignore my orders? Crowley roars. According to our investigation, the special forces are secretly connected to this organization. Cayman states firmly. Are you accusing us, the special forces, of wrongdoing? Hearing this, Crowley's anger intensifies. I'm simply eliminating some potential threats. Cayman doesn't back down at all. Crowley directly draws his sword from its sheath. You ignorant bastard. The special forces members all draw their weapons too, but Cayman's subordinates aren't pushovers either, immediately preparing for battle. Neither side is willing to back down. A fight could break out at any moment. Julian doesn't understand why armies both belonging to Husfakan would fight over who's superior. Carnelian wonders whether to help Cayman, but doing so would expose her strength. Husfakan Imperial Palace. Sir, we've received reports that the border forces are investigating the special forces. An aide in the palace is reporting to his superior if they discover the truth about the holy city. At this thought, the man can't help but laugh. The powerful defeat enemies from outside, while the clever strike from within. The noble man explains while leaning on his hand. If General Archibald learns the truth about the holy city, what do you think his reaction will be? The scene shifts back. Although both sides are arguing intensely, they haven't moved. They're at a standstill. Crowley's subordinate quietly reminds Crowley they're outnumbered and should retreat. retreat. At this moment, rapid footsteps approach, and quite a few of them. It's the troops Cayman sent out to investigate earlier, now rejoining the main force. Seeing the other side has more people now, Crowley is already thinking of retreating. Ding! Crowley sheathes his sword. You're lucky. Crowley turns to leave, but he's still unwilling inside. Cayman also immediately sheathes his sword and turns to order his subordinates to search this place thoroughly. Cayman is determined to find evidence of the Special Forces violations. Crowley was already angry about the Holy City being sealed off. Now he's even more displeased. Crowley arrives at the apple orchard, loudly calling for the person in charge. He quickly approaches the person in charge and informs them the border forces have already traced the Assassin's Guild. Crowley states, it's only a matter of time before this place is discovered. They should gather their forces to strike back now. Even if they find this place, would they dare come? The Orthodox Church Holy City branch leader reassures Crowley. He continues, completely ignoring Crowley's twisted expression. Attacking the Orthodox Church means attacking the Emperor. They wouldn't dare. I said, we need to mobilize all our forces. How dare you speak to me this way? Crowley completely loses it, interrupting the branch leader's words. I'm the Orthodox Church branch. Before the branch leader can finish, Crowley grabs him by the chest. Crowley roars at the branch leader viciously. Summon all the military forces right now. If the border forces discover this place, then you, me, and all these poison apples are finished. Do you understand? The branch leader is too intimidated to speak. Border force outpost. Hessen is standing guard outside Cayman's tent. Cayman brings Julian's group into the tent, hoping they can cooperate with the investigation. Of course, I hope you'll catch and punish those bad people soon. Carnelon continues acting coy. SEO thinks to himself that she's already punished everyone. Commander Cayman, I found leads related to the drugs. The voice of Cayman's subordinate comes from outside the tent. Seeing there are people in the tent, the subordinate doesn't dare enter. But Cayman isn't that kind of superior. He tells the subordinate to come in and report. They've already found solid evidence of transactions between the Special Forces and the Guild, but the manufacturing source is still unknown. The Holy City has been completely sealed off, but the drug supply hasn't been cut off, meaning the source must be within the Holy City. It's normal you haven't found the manufacturing source. Sharon's voice sounds behind everyone. Torbin brought Sharon here after treating her wounds, because Sharon had stolen those apples. Seeing Sharon covered in wounds, Julian asks if she's alright. Sharon says she's much better now, and she knows where the poisoned apple orchard is. Cayman interrupts the conversation, excitedly asking Sharon where the location is. However, the location Sharon names shocks everyone. Cayman can't believe it and asks again, getting the same answer. Beneath the Husvakan Orthodox Church headquarters. But Cayman quickly realizes, no wonder the Special Forces protecting the Orthodox Church tried to stop his investigation. But investigating the Orthodox Church would be considered treason. Normal investigation definitely won't work. However, Sharon quickly adds that she knows a way in. Cayman focuses on this girl who keeps bringing him surprises. Sharon states that for the children's future, she fully agrees to lead the way. You promise me, after taking them there, you'll return the same way. Torbin doesn't want her to get hurt again. Julian asks, puzzled, is everyone going? Carnelon definitively answers yes. The fiery sky reflects on the Orthodox Church headquarters, seeming to herald an unprecedented change about to occur. Under Sharon's guidance, Cayman's group quickly reaches beneath the Orthodox Church headquarters. If they hadn't seen it with their own eyes, Cayman's group wouldn't believe this is actually under the Orthodox Church. Walking at the back of the group, Torbin urges Sharon to go back quickly, but Sharon doesn't move. At the end of the apple orchard path, a figure blocks everyone's way. Cayman waves his hand, signaling the troops to halt. You've finally come here, Cayman. The person blocking the way is Crowley. You've been doing this illegal activity all along, Crowley. Cayman slowly draws his sword. Crowley, you're under arrest. Surrender peacefully. Cayman draws his sword, pointing at Crowley. Ha ha ha. Crowley suddenly bursts into wild laughter, confusing Cayman and the others. Being young is a good thing. Crowley looks back at Cayman with a sinister expression. You're very brave, Cayman, you know that? The Holy City was founded 10 years ago. Countless people from all over the Empire flooded here. The Orthodox Church conducted countless experiments on these ordinary people to create drugs. Do you think why they dare do such things? Do you really think I'm the mastermind? They actually experimented on ordinary people. Julian can't believe it. Shut up, stop talking nonsense and surrender. Cayman roars. Crowley gathers fire magic in his hand. He turns and throws a fireball. The fireball passes over Cayman's group, then explodes behind Sharon and Torbin at the back of the group. The flames block their escape route. The fruit trees burst into flames, accompanied by dense footsteps. Soon, weapon-wielding believers and special forces surround Cayman's squad. They had predicted Cayman's group would enter from here. Cayman draws his sword ready for battle. He knows this time is different from last time. This time they'll really fight. I won't let a single one of you leave here alive. Crowley grins viciously. Swords and enchanted staffs clash and strike continuously. Everyone here fights with the determination to die. Facing death, they have no possibility of mercy. Hold formation. Stay together. Cayman's voice reaches every warrior's ears. Julian and and Sharon are protected in the middle. Hessen struggles to block multiple staffs. There are too many opponents. The path between him and Cayman is blocked by the enemy. He can't support Cayman. Cayman dodges forward through the bombardment of fireballs. He must engage in close combat. But Crowley doesn't intend to give him the chance to get close. Cayman knows he must quickly take down Crowley, or morale will be hard to maintain. His fighting spirit is higher than ever. His agile movements make Crowley's fireballs unable to hit. Finally, Cayman breaks through to close range with Crowley, knocking his sword away in one strike. Just when Cayman thinks it's all over, he sees a light at Crowley's sleeve. A knight's instinct makes him dodge to the side, and indeed an arrow shoots from Crowley's sleeve. Although Cayman dodges the arrow, this plays right into Crowley's hands. Crowley grabs Cayman's sword hand. His scheme has succeeded. Crowley uses fire magic again, burning Cayman's right hand black and unable to grip the sword. You're too young. Everyone knows a mage's weakness is close combat. Did you think I wouldn't prepare countermeasures for close range? Cayman, die! The arrow in Crowley's right sleeve prepares to fire again. Fool! Aura flows in Cayman's eyes. Powerful aura bursts from Cayman's right hand, blasting Crowley away. Crowley is sent flying several meters by this sudden strike. You bastard! Crowley raises his hand to cast magic, but Cayman is already standing with sword in left hand, using his body's force to drive the sword in a slash. Crowley's eyes widen as he watches his spell-casting hand fly before his eyes. You fool! Cayman presses his sword to Crowley's neck. You underestimated me too much. Everyone listen, your commander has been captured. Surrender now, and it's not too late. Cayman's voice echoes throughout the scene. Seeing Crowley has been caught, the believers and special forces all drop their weapons and surrender. Suddenly an explosion sounds nearby. Cayman turns to look. Crowley has escaped using a smoke bomb. The border forces quickly clean up the battlefield, tying up all prisoners. Carnelian says she was just about to make a move when the battle ended. Julian is glad Carnelian held back. Now the holy city should be able to return to its original state. However, I'm very curious about this pot-like thing. SEO's voice draws everyone's attention. This pot is the tool Crowley used to escape. Carnelian walks up to an old believer. Older people surely know more. She asks the old man what the pot is, but he says it's classified. So Carnelian picks up a rock, then crushes the large rock with her bare hands, terrifying the old believer. What do you think would happen if I squeezed your head? Carnelian smiles as she brings her hand near his head. The old believer explains it's a test product with serious side effects. This drug can control anyone who's even touched drugs once. That means all the ordinary residents in the holy city, they've all used drugs. Torbin grabs the old man, asking where the antidote is. The old man says there's a drug that can prevent being controlled, but those already controlled need the controller to release them. Give me the antidote right now. Torbin's veins bulge all over as he roars at the old man. At this moment, outside the Orthodox Church tower, two demon-like figures appear. They're massive with terrifying faces. A border force soldier raises his sword looking toward the monster, but his comrade doesn't understand his behavior, because those two demons are actually Cayman and Hessen, and most soldiers are under hallucination control. Kill them! Everyone snap out of it, one of the soldiers shouts. Under the effect of the hallucinogenic drug, the soldier's heart convulses violently. He grabs his chest, the pain preventing him from moving. When he opens his eyes again, a demon's claw is reaching toward him. The border force soldiers don't fear death, so they all raise their swords to strike at the demons. Hessen asks Cayman for permission to strike down these severely controlled people. Cayman grips his sword tightly, unable to swing at his own subordinates he's lived with day and night. But the mentally controlled soldiers charge at him fiercely with their swords. Cayman raises his sword to block the incoming attacks. He firmly believes there must be a way to save these soldiers. At this moment, the holy city streets are filled with mentally controlled people, and the sky has turned an eerie color. Not far from Cayman's position, on a rooftop, Crowley's broken body manipulates the magic in his hands. Look over there! Is that mind control? SEO cries out in disbelief. The controlled people are actually attacking their own comrades. Torbin and Sharon aren't being controlled by Crowley's mind control because they took the antidote. Unfortunately, several controlled people nearby discover them. They immediately charge to attack Julian's group. Torbin instantly uses his agility to attack the incoming people. However, he uses the knife handle, since these people are innocent controlled victims. From residents to soldiers, everyone's controlled. Torbin says looking back. SEO decides to join Torbin in saving these controlled people. Torbin tells Sharon to find a safe place to hide. Seeing both SEO and Torbin go, Julian wants to go too. Looking at her master, Carnelian knows what he wants to do. Julian is about to run out. When Carnelian grabs his hand, Julian looks back at Carnelian puzzled, not understanding why she's stopping him. That's too dangerous. If you're in danger, I'll have to intervene, Carnelian explains. Then she'll have to fight. The Empire Knight Cayman, even though he's seriously injured, he can still control aura. If we intervene now, things will only get worse. Julian knows this means all their efforts these past days will be wasted. Julian takes both of Carnelian's hands in his. Carnelian, there are still many children here who aren't controlled. I know I'm weak, but I'll just take those children to safety. I won't join the battle. Julian looks at Carnelian sincerely. Carnelian wavers. She's always known that Julian is a kind person. I really can't help it with you. You're the master. You should command me to do things, not persuade me. Carnelian sighs. Just then, a controlled soldier behind Carnelian spots her. Carnelian, be careful. Julian prepares to leave. I'll wait here for you. Carnelian smiles at Julian, but two soldiers are already about to strike her from behind. Carnelian, watch out! out!" Julian shouts in terror. Fortunately, Carnelian draws her sword in time to block the attack, but from the other side another soldier swings his sword. Carnelian can't react in time. "Watch out!" Julian throws himself in front of Carnelian to block the sword for her. Blood immediately sprays from his back. Carnelian sees the blood gushing from Julian's back. Her pupils immediately transform to carnelian red. Sensing Carnelian's powerful aura, Cayman's whole body stiffens. The massive impact sends dust flying from the buildings. Carnelian swings her sword at the soldier who just wounded Julian. Clang! The piercing sound of metal on metal echoes throughout. Cayman blocks Carnelian's strike. "It seems you're not the Lady Carnelian I know," Cayman shouts with difficulty at Carnelian, but he sees those carnelian red pupils. Recalling the strange behavior of Hessen when they first met, Cayman understands. "So what? Cayman, move aside, or I'll cut you down too." Carnelian increases the force in her hands, pressing Cayman down so he can't rise. "Lady Carnelian, he's a good person, he's just being manipulated." Cayman still tries to appeal to Carnelian's reason. Carnelian's eyes flash with ferocity as she raises her greatsword, about to strike Cayman down as well. "Carnelian, please lower your sword!" Julian rushes over to stop Carnelian, and she actually does stop. "I'm begging you, Carnelian, don't kill Mr. Cayman." Julian holds his wounded shoulder. Bang! The greatsword is thrown to the ground. What kind of master would protect a seal? Carnelian doesn't know, but now there's one right here. Carnelian takes off her coat to wrap around Julian's wound. "I'm so sorry, I promised to be careful but got hurt right away." Julian apologizes to Carnelian with deep regret. Carnelian's angry emotions subside. She doesn't know why there would be such a master. "So you're the Carnelian red-eyed seal the Empire is hunting." Cayman stands and says, "So what, are you going to arrest me?" Cayman. Carnelian responds coldly, "No, Lady Carnelian, I'd like to ask you to kill Crowley. I believe you have that ability." Cayman says softly, "Carnelian, we should help them. Mr. Cayman won't break his word, I trust him." Julian holds Carnelian's hand. "I can help, but you must guarantee my master's safety, or I'll kill all of you." Carnelian looks back at Cayman. Cayman nods, agreeing. Right now he can only rely on Carnelian. Seeing Cayman agree, Carnelian crouches down, supporting herself with one hand, gathering all her strength in her legs. Then she leaps up. Arriving in midair, her carnelian red eyes quickly scan the city. She soon discovers Crowley preparing to attack Cayman. Crowley has been eroded by the drug at this moment. His entire body has become a bomb. He wants everyone to die with him, and his target is the seriously wounded Cayman. The massive explosion Crowley triggers is about to engulf Cayman. Hessen teleported right in front of Cayman, spreading both hands to create a defensive barrier. The barrier enclosed the exploding Crowley within it, but Hessen didn't want to see his master get hurt, so he directly sealed himself and Crowley inside the spherical barrier. Hessen struggled desperately to withstand the overlapping explosions of Crowley's fire magic. "Hessen!" Cayman pounded on the barrier with all his might, terrified as he tried to save Hessen. Watching Hessen attempt to contain the explosion within the barrier, Carnelian was simply too far away to save him in time. All she could do now was pray for Hessen's survival. After all, they'd known each other for a long time. Boom! The barrier couldn't withstand the force of the explosion and developed countless cracks. The next moment the barrier shattered, and Hessen was thrown toward Cayman by the tremendous impact. "Hessen!" Cayman held the unconscious Hessen, crying out in grief and rage. "Thank goodness you're not hurt." Hessen slowly regained consciousness, and seeing Cayman unharmed, his heart filled with joy. Looking at the extremely weakened Hessen, Cayman's face showed sadness. He couldn't understand why Hessen had done this, but Hessen smiled and said that protecting one's master was a seal's duty. However, against everyone's expectations, Crowley had actually survived. Seeing he couldn't drag Cayman to death with him, Crowley grabbed a child to threaten everyone. Since he was about to die anyway, he was determined to take someone down with him. Crowley was certain that Cayman, being a knight, would come himself to replace the child. Cayman gritted his teeth. He knew this was Crowley's open scheme, but he couldn't just ignore the child. He then gently laid down the once again unconscious Hessen. Cayman slowly rose with his sword. "Crowley, I hope you keep your word. I'll come in place of this child." "Of course." Before Crowley could finish speaking, someone severed his head. The one who struck was none other than the furious Carnelian. Torbin also arrived just in time, his dagger stabbing toward Crowley while snatching the child from his grasp. Having never witnessed such a bloody scene before, the child ran away crying. "Couldn't you be more careful? Weren't you afraid I'd cut you down too?" Carnelian scolded the approaching Torbin. "I thought a seal wanted by the Empire would be faster than me." Torbin ignored Carnelian's expression. After Crowley was eliminated, everyone's mind control was lifted, and Cayman reassembled his subordinates. Suddenly, Carnelian's eyes returned to blue as she detected someone approaching. "Everyone face right, salute!" Cayman also noticed the newcomer and ordered his surviving subordinates. Following Cayman's command, everyone saluted the visitor in military fashion. The newcomer was none other than Archibald, the commander-in-chief of the Husvakan border forces, who returned their salute. The commander then slowly walked toward Carnelian. Carnelian knew that this old man had instantly recognized her identity. Seeing the commander and Carnelian getting closer, Cayman tried to step between them, running and shouting, "Commander, who are these people?" The commander asked Cayman expressionlessly, who frantically explained they had come come to help him. But this woman is not human. Before the commander could finish, Julian interrupted him. She's someone I've entrusted my life to. Julian stepped in front of Carnelian to shield her. I understand. Unexpectedly, the commander didn't press the matter. Julian's tense nerves finally relaxed. Carnelian wondered why the commander was pretending not to recognize her. As commander-in-chief, I thank you for supporting the border forces. The commander looked at Julian, not Carnelian. It wasn't just my doing. We were all in this together. Julian cheerfully replied to the commander. It seems the holy city isn't entirely full of scoundrels. The commander's stern face actually showed a smile. Julian swallowed hard, forcing himself to lie. To be honest, we're from Derkart but are now trapped in the holy city. Julian clenched his fists. Carnelian's heart raced with anxiety, because what Julian said was almost worse than directly revealing their identity. Are you asking the border forces commander to let you cross the border? The commander's face gradually darkened. I'm just being honest, commander. Julian was all in. There was no turning back now. Though he expected a stern refusal, the commander surprisingly smiled instead. A person only becomes this bold when they truly want to protect someone dear to them. It seems you'd do anything for her. May we speak privately? Lady. The commander looked at Carnelian. With me? Carnelian pretended to know nothing. Carnelian then followed the commander deep into a deserted alley. Aren't we going a bit too far? Carnelian asked the old man coyly. His response was to draw his sword. Carnelian's eyes widened. Her worst fears were coming true after all. Clang! Carnelian drew her greatsword to block the commander's downward strike, the clash of metal echoing through the alley. Red-eyed seal, you're far too dangerous. The commander pressed down with all his strength. Since the commander had exposed her identity, Carnelian's eyes gradually turned red. So you knew who I was all along. Carnelian's strength gradually increased. Carnelian pushed the commander back, her eyes locked onto his every movement. Let me see what you're truly capable of. Carnelian readied her stance to pursue the commander, but she stopped as soon as she charged forward, because the commander had already sheathed his sword. The royal decree says to capture the red-eyed seal, but I only see a blue-eyed seal, the commander explained with a smile. What? Carnelian was confused. She'd been preparing for an all-out battle. Your aura is too strong. Do you need a ship to get to Derkart? The commander slowly walked toward Carnelian. No one holds a grudge against their son's savior. I'm very grateful for that. The commander walked past Carnelian, but the commander stopped and turned. That boy, your master, he's too naive. Keeping him by your side puts him at great risk. You should be more worried about your dying son. Carnelian glared at him. The commander didn't stay to argue further with Carnelian, but turned to leave. Perhaps I'm overstepping, but I hope you'll take my words to heart, the commander added before leaving. Carnelian didn't argue back, because she knew the commander was right. Meanwhile, inside the Okalante Imperial Palace, nobles were enjoying afternoon tea in the garden. Among them, a blonde man was tasting tea brought by a maid. Michelle, your tea is too bitter, the man grimaced. He was the emperor himself. He refused Michelle's request to have the imperial chef make tea, instead asking Michelle to brew another cup. Michelle couldn't refuse the emperor's request and had to go make more tea. Jarang still hasn't shown herself. She probably went to Derkart. That's the most likely outcome. The emperor's voice reached the ears of the other two present. The Husfakan people are truly unreliable. Michelle responded to the emperor's words. If I personally led an expedition to capture Jarang, Mertzel would scold me endlessly. At the mention of Jarang's name, Michelle's expression gradually darkened. You always make that face whenever they're mentioned. Michelle isn't being with me better than being with Mertzel? The emperor looked at Michelle. Don't tell me you want to go back? The emperor sneered contemptuously. I only follow my master's orders. After Mertzel transferred me to you, I only obey your commands, your majesty. Such a boring answer. The emperor closed his eyes, seemingly long accustomed to this. I will capture her, your majesty. Please give me this chance to prove my loyalty. The bald, burly man sitting beside the emperor spoke up. He was none other than Haken, captain of the Lisenbel Empire Guard. Is it because she once beat you to a pulp, so you want revenge while her power hasn't recovered? I want to test these humans, to see if these insects can catch Jarang while she's weakened. Your majesty, may I ask why you're so determined to capture her? The woman who had been observing spoke up. Are you worried about Tessing Knight returning? The woman was Brunhild, leader of the Lisenbel Empire Guard. Tessing is somewhere he can't return from on his own. At the mention of Tessing's name, Hermann Obenbaha's face darkened, which means he could return with someone else's help. Brunhild caught the loophole in the emperor's words. It seems Jarang is the key to solving this problem. Brunhild opened her eyes, purple irises glowing. You seem to know what needs to be done. Hermann's golden eyes fixed intently on Brunhild. Your majesty, I apologize for my words and actions. Brunhild understood the meaning behind Hermann's words. I know you admire Tessing Knight, but if it happens again, I'll end you myself. Hermann's veins bulged. I will remember, your majesty. Brunhild quickly stood and bowed. In any case, I'm willing to give humans one more chance. Hermann sat back down and stretched. After all, I don't want to personally destroy the world I created. The scene shifted to the port, where Torbin and his sister were talking with SEO. SEO was surprised that Torbin chose to leave Sharon and the Holy City. Torbin said he'd never left the Holy City before, and wanted to see the world for himself. What about you? Sharon, will you go with Torbin? Seo looked at Sharon. Sharon said said she would stay in the Holy City and help make it better. Sharon then extended her hand to Torbin, making a promise to meet again in 10 years. In 10 years, I'll wait for you at Notre Dame. All right, Torbin cheerfully agreed with Sharon. He was confident she could live alone in the current Holy City. They then happily made a pinky promise to meet again in 10 years. On another side, Cayman was also saying goodbye to Julian and the others. Cayman thanked Carnelian for saving him and for not killing him on Black West Mountain. Carnelian laughed awkwardly. After all, she really had wanted to kill Cayman back then. I sincerely believe you're a beautiful lady. Perhaps I still need more training. Cayman suddenly bowed to Carnelian. Carnelian stood on her tiptoes. She kissed Cayman on the forehead. Julian was shocked by this sudden intimate atmosphere. He'd never seen anything like this. For your help, we have no way to repay you except to express our gratitude this way. Carnelian smiled at Cayman. You're an admirable knight. Carnelian's words left Cayman unable to recover for a long time, his flushed cheeks saying it all. Take care, until we meet again. After speaking, Carnelian turned and left with Julian. Suddenly, Carnelian pinched Julian's cheek, making him cry out in pain. When you grow up, you'll have this too, master! Carnelian smirked mischievously. Julian thought Carnelian was saying he was too young and inexperienced. The Holy City incident came to a close, and Julian's group finally embarked on the final leg of their journey to Derkart. Carnelian said from now on they'd rely on the wind to take them to Derkart. Looking at the beautiful scenery before them, everyone forgot about the burdens they carried. However, they didn't know that something massive was stirring beneath the sea. The good times didn't last long. SEO got seasick again. Seeing SEO in such a miserable state, Carnelian came over to ask if he was all right, only to receive his complaints. But Carnelian claimed she could cure seasickness. Her method, however, knocked SEO out completely. Finally, no one's vomiting in my ear. Carnelian's plan succeeded, and she was quite pleased. She then asked Julian if he also felt seasick, and Julian quickly said he was fine. Well, I was going to let you rest your head on my lap and pat your head, Carnelian said regretfully. Hearing this, Julian quickly explained he suddenly felt a bit seasick after all. Under the glow of the setting sun, the ship drifted with the wind toward their destination, Derkart. Both Carnelian and Julian reflected on how, after months of evading pursuit, they hadn't relaxed and enjoyed the scenery like this. Julian suddenly called out to Carnelian. Carnelian, I want to become a proper knight. Carnelian, who had been relaxed, suddenly tensed up. You're joking, right? If this is just to distract me, you don't need to do this. Carnelian urgently questioned Julian, but Julian seriously grabbed Carnelian's shoulders. I want to protect you from the Emperor's harm, and we can't keep running forever. Don't say such foolish things. You might die before you even see him. Carnelian's voice was no longer calm. Even so, it doesn't matter. Julian raised his voice as well. Doesn't matter? My previous master said the same thing, and now he's dead. Carnelian angrily shook off Julian's hands. The dead can say it doesn't matter, but what about those who live on carrying their memories? Julian had no response. It was the truth. Before the Emperor captures me, I'm glad to have traveled with you. Carnelian clutched her chest, sincerely expressing her thoughts. The stronger you become, the greater our risk. I don't need a powerful master. Carnelian left in anger. Torbin, who had just opened the door, looked bewildered at the furious Carnelian. Carnelian's eyes gradually turned red. By the time she entered the cabin, her eyes had completely turned red. Torbin found Julian remaining on deck and asked what happened. Torbin had seen Carnelian angry many times, but this was definitely the look of someone afraid of losing someone important. Torbin, you know what? Before this, I just wanted to become a chef like my father. Julian's face darkened. Until I met Carnelian, everything changed. When she woke up and asked me what her name was, right at that moment, I knew she and my life had become intertwined. Do you regret it, Julian? Torbin interrupted Julian's narration. No, I can't imagine what life would be like without Carnelian. Julian's tone was firm. Though I'm only 16, I know that a chef and a seal don't make a good match. If people understood each other from birth, life would be meaningless. What do you think? Listening to Torbin's words, Julian's heart was deeply conflicted. He just didn't want to lose Carnelian. That was all. The next day's sun rose as usual, seemingly never having troubles of its own. Julian, get up! Seo shouted while running frantically. Carnelian is gone! At these words, Julian's eyes flew open. We've searched the entire ship and can't find any trace of her. Torbin also arrived to explain the situation. Julian's eyes widened in disbelief. He couldn't believe Carnelian had left without saying goodbye. He spent half the day searching the entire ship, but he found nothing that might be related to Carnelian. Was his promise too heavy a burden for her? Julian didn't know. All he knew was that Carnelian's image grew clearer and clearer in his mind, from her hair to her expressions. When she was happy, her lips would hum a gentle melody, and she always bore all her pain alone. Anxiety and despair crushed Julian. Tears of sadness fell uncontrollably from the corners of his eyes, just like Carnelian, leaving him on her own accord. Julian knelt on the ground, sobbing helplessly, but Carnelian's departure was now a fact. 1 week later, the ship still remained in the same spot. Damn it, why hasn't there been any wind for a whole week? SEO angrily grabbed the mast and complained. Torbin's eyes filled with killing intent. Stop moping around. You're the only one who can sail sail this ship now. Torbin walked up to Julian and scolded him harshly. We're running out of food supplies. Torbin grew angrier as he spoke. I have no intention of joining your cowardly death march. Torbin drew the dagger from his waist. If you don't sail the ship, I'll kill you right now. Torbin thrust the dagger at Julian's neck, but Seo stopped him. Suddenly, Torbin heard something approaching. Seo saw a ship in the distance and, thinking it was Cayman coming to rescue them, waved his hands frantically for help. No, that's not Cayman's ship. Torbin drew his dagger, ready for combat. That's a pirate ship! Torbin recognized the approaching vessel. The huge skull on the flag revealed the ship's identity. As the distance closed, the pirate ship suddenly accelerated. The ship Torbin and Seo were on suffered a violent impact, and both struggled to steady themselves. The pirate ship lowered its boarding planks. Brothers, the sea has given us a new ship. Burn the old one! The captain leading them cheered and leaped down with his sword raised. Boom! The pirate ship suddenly exploded. With no wind, such a large-scale explosion was still possible. Seeing the enemy about to seize the ship, Torbin's mood worsened. Originally, they just needed to repel them, but now it was a fight to the death. This ship is ours. Surrender now to become slaves while you still can, the pirates shouted loudly. Just as Seo prepared to draw his sword to fight, Torbin's form had already vanished like a streak of light. The pirate captain's shoulder was instantly slashed open. I'd rather die than surrender. Torbin's form appeared on the mast. As an assassin from the holy city, I've killed plenty of people like you. Torbin slowly extended his bloody dagger. There are only two of them, brothers. Don't be afraid. The pirate captain didn't retreat despite his injury, instead rallying his companions. Three, though one's not in great shape, Seo loudly corrected them. Julian, get somewhere safe. Seo turned to warn Julian, but he found Julian's entire body glowing with an eerie blue light as he slowly walked toward the pirates. I thought I was prepared to make sacrifices, but the truth is I didn't dare draw this sword. Julian's voice no longer carried its childish tone, recalling Thesius's warning, but now that Carnelon had left, Julian had nothing to worry about anymore. Watching Julian's glowing body, the pirate captain felt something was wrong. Torbin also noticed that Julian's mental state was definitely not normal. Given their current situation, there was nothing left to hesitate about. Julian gripped Infertle's hilt tightly. He finally drew Infertile, and a powerful magic circle appeared beneath his feet. He actually drew Infertile. Seo was shocked by this. Dazzling blue light radiated from the ship. The powerful pressure forced everyone to resist with all their might. Numerous skulls emerged from Infertile's tip, their piercing screams hurting everyone's eardrums. Shortly after Julian drew Infertile, he lost control and fell backward. He still couldn't control Infertile and had lost consciousness from its backlash. With a thud, Julian collapsed completely onto the deck. Seo was alarmed and rushed to Julian's side to check on him. Seeing Julian unresponsive, Seo pressed his ear directly to Julian's chest to listen for a heartbeat. He's alive. He just passed out. Hearing Seo's words, Torbin relaxed. Torbin sheathed his dagger and said, if the pirates would take them to Derkart, they could have the ship. The pirates still wanted to make threats, but the pirate captain stopped them. The pirate captain said he was also heading to Derkart. Torbin's gaze became even more fierce. The food problem is yours to figure out. Seo, if Julian dies, throw him into the sea. If he's not dead, wake him up to cook. The scene shifted to show a float bobbing constantly, indicating a fish had taken the bait. Julian directly pulled up his rod and hooked the fish. The basket beside him was nearly overflowing with fish. You caught a lot of fish today, Julian. Seo walked toward Julian with a smile, but Julian only nodded stiffly. After Julian woke up, he hadn't said anything, but he was fishing and cooking. Seo didn't know if he was normal. Just as Julian was about to cast his line again, he suddenly felt wind he hadn't felt in a long time. Finally, there's wind. The pirates quickly raised the sails to prepare for departure. Seo sighed with relief that they could finally set off, but Torbin said something seemed strange. The next second, the calm sea suddenly became turbulent, with lightning constantly striking from the sky. The pirate captain grabbed the mast and ordered the sailors to raise the sails. The previously stable ship was rocked violently left and right by the churning water. The seasick Seo immediately felt sick and wanted to vomit. Julian suddenly noticed a dark shadow flash by underwater. He pointed down, but his silence made Torbin think he wanted to jump into the sea. Torbin quickly grabbed Julian, but unexpectedly Julian actually spoke. There's something under the water. As soon as he finished speaking, a giant octopus tentacle emerged from below. A giant with an octopus head rose from the seabed, with Julian and the other's ship in its mouth. This was the Kraken, the ocean's overlord reigning supreme above all creatures. It was preparing to welcome the great water dragon king, Mertzel. A vortex gathered into an enormous water tornado before the Kraken. This aura from the ship, is that Durang? Mertzel blocked the Kraken's path. Mertzel's voice caused too much damage. Even covering their ears didn't help those on the ship. Durang? That's Carnelion's previous name. Julian's eyes widened as he heard the water dragon king's voice. I'm Durang's master. Do you know Durang? Julian struggled to get up but could only speak loudly, but his voice still reached Mertzel's ears. Don't lie to me. Mertzel opened her massive maw and roared. I'm not lying. I'm Durang's master. I named her Carnelon. Julian crouched down under the immense pressure. Carnelon? Mertzel's eyes showed a puzzled expression. How dare you deceive the Water Dragon King, the Kraken's eyes bulged with rage. Lord Mertzel? He looked at the scene before him in disbelief. Mertzel's body radiated light that poured into the ship in the Kraken's mouth. The blinding light forced Julian and the others to cover their eyes. I haven't used this form in a long time, and it's been ages since I've met someone so bold. Mertzel transformed into a blue-haired girl with twin tails and appeared before everyone. Suddenly, Mertzel stepped on some seaweed. Then she face-planted right in front of everyone. Mertzel angrily threw the seaweed to the ground, completely lacking her previous majestic image. She seems kind of clumsy, doesn't she? Seo whispered to Torbin. But unexpectedly, Mertzel heard Seo's words. Seo quickly apologized and slapped himself. Looking at Julian's extended hand, Mertzel sitting on the deck understood his meaning. She then stood up using Julian's hand. You said your name is Julian? Mertzel looked at Julian's face. Her eyes widened immediately. She knew this face well. Who exactly are you? Mertzel questioned Julian, but he didn't know what she meant. Unexpectedly, Mertzel shook off Julian's hand and loudly demanded to know his true identity. I think you must have me confused with someone else. I'm just a chef from Kyone. Hearing this, Mertzel was even more shocked. This was too absurd for her. The Carnelian you speak of is the seal of the Empire's Dragon Emperor. Did you know this when you made your contract? Mertzel received Julian's negative answer. No matter what she was before, I'll accept her. Speaking of Carnelian, Julian's eyes were no longer empty. As reckless as always, Mertzel couldn't help but comment. I am reckless, but we've never met before, have we? Julian didn't understand her words. Mertzel didn't answer Julian's question, instead saying there was a reason they met. Let me tell you a secret. Mertzel suddenly lowered her voice. There are 3 types of dragon kings in this world. The king of sky and wind, Tessing. The king of earth and mountains. And I, Mertzel, am the king of ocean and water. The king of earth and mountains is your humans, supreme emperor, Hermann Obenbaha. Hundreds of years ago, Tessing and Hermann waged a great war or dominion of humanity. Hermann sealed Tessing's seal Jarang, putting Tessing in grave danger. Julian lowered his head, so Carnelian left because he awakened unpleasant memories for her. You're Jarang's current master. Mertzel put her hands on her hips. She's a dragon. Right now, you can't handle her power. I'm Carnelian's master. I don't care about any of that. Julian clenched his fists. I promise to always stay by her side. Julian firmly stated what was in his heart. Oh, I suppose some things never change even after hundreds or thousands of years. Mertzel was speechless. Soon Mertzel noticed infertile at Julian's waist. It seems you don't know how to use that sword? Mertzel's words struck right at Julian's heart. I want to become stronger so Carnelian will come back to me. Julian looked at Mertzel excitedly. Are you truly willing to give your life for this? Mertzel crossed her arms and questioned. If it will protect Carnelian, then I'm willing to give everything, even my life. Julian had never been so resolute. Meanwhile, the scene shifted to Curson. Haywood pushed open the tavern door and strode in. One dry martini. Haywood found a seat and sat down casually to order. Suddenly, Haywood's eyes widened as he studied the bartender carefully. I don't remember seeing you before. The bartender was a beautiful girl with crimson hair wearing a sundress. Most memorable were her equally red eyes. This is Carnelian. She just started working here yesterday. The owner appeared to explain the customer's confusion. My name's Haywood. Haywood sat before Carnelian, now sitting properly instead of so casually as before. You're not from around here, are you? Why'd you come here? Haywood continued. Don't all people who come here have their own stories? Carnelian lowered her brows. They either ran here or chased here, so you must be one of them too. If you just arrived, I recommend a restaurant. But before Haywood could finish, Carnelian declined. I appreciate your recommendation, but first I need to meet someone. Time jumped to a year later in Belvolt. This was a port city where many sailors stopped to rest. Look, that's the Gaspar privateer ship. 2 sisters walking down the street pointed toward the harbor. The Gaspar privateer's bright red hull was very easy to recognize. And they say there's even a noble knight on board. It was the grown-up Julian. Wow. Isn't this the famous noble knight? The more muscular and taller Torbin mocked Julian, the noble knight who unified all the pirates in 1 year and received national authorization for a privateer ship. Seo continued to add fuel to the fire. Julian sighed. These two teased him like this every day. Julian then asked Torbin why he hadn't seen Lady Mertzel, and Torbin said she went shopping. Guys, I've already bought all the necessities. Mertzel's voice rang out at the perfect moment. Lady Mertzel, did you only take Grazita shopping again? Julian looked at Mertzel laden with packages. Torbin said she should have brought guards along, since she couldn't use her full power on land. You little brats dare show such disrespect to the king of ocean and water? Mertzel angrily pointed at the 3 accusingly. Why did you buy so many clothes again? You're going to sink the ship. Seo continued to run his mouth without concern. Mind your own business. Who says a dragon can't have special hobbies? Mertzel roared. Put them down, Grazita. These things must be heavy, right? Julian extended his hand to Grazita. Thank you for your concern, master. Grazita brought her hands to her chest and expressed gratitude in a soft voice. Grazita, don't go shopping with her next time. The more people, the more she buys. Torbin also looked at Grazita. Grazita, have you ever thought about designating one master? Seo ignored Mertzel now and looked at Grazita instead. What? Choose just one? Grazita's mouth opened wide in surprise. But Master Seo, Master Torbin, and Master Julian are all my masters. Can I only designate one? Grazita fretted as she counted on her fingers. Seeing such an adorable Grazita, Seo quickly said it wasn't mandatory, and Mertzel also showed a happy smile. Noble knight, we've got trouble! A figure burst into everyone's view.